Let's do it.
Caitlin, you good?
Clock's low.
I think we're good.
Wait until 6.
That clock says 6.
Apple time 6 for.
Yes.
Welcome to the June 18, 2025 meeting of the Fluvanna Board of Supervisors. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Any changes?
I do have one item to add to the agenda under new business, and the item's called resolution to petition the circuit court for issuance of a writ of election. So what do we?
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the agenda as presented with the exception as noted by Mr. Dahl.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hodge, seconded by Mr. Goode. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 3-0. Moving on to Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Got actually a lot of new employees to report here. So want to introduce William Bill Barber for the Public Works Department. He started as the Assistant Director of Public Works on started June 10th. So happy to have Bill on board. Also, want to welcome kind of in a promotion, McGregor MJ Lieutenant in the EMS department to the new Emergency Medical Services Supervisor, and he started in that new role on June 16th. Jennifer Wisselman, we got her for the Human Resources Department. She's filling the role of the Interim Director of Human Resources. She also started this past Monday, June 16th. We had John Gallagher, who started in the IT department for the IT systems engineer. He started on June 16th. Jeremy Wood for the Sheriff's Department started as a deputy, also started June 16th. Same with Patrick McGee, started for the Sheriff's Office as a deputy June 16th. And then finally, Jonathan Pace, also for the Sheriff's Department as a deputy, and he's also started June 16th. So this Monday was a busy day for HR and everything, all these new employees starting. Also, we had the first Art in the Park, which was held at Pleasant Grove Park from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There was 18 art vendors and 5 food trucks. The event was previously called Village of Palmyra, and it was called the Palmyra Arts Festival. It was held in the Village of Palmyra and called the Palmyra Arts Festival. It had a great, great showing with the exception of it was really hot and humid, and there was some, chance for showers that day, but there were approximately 400 guests that visited the event that day, and the next Art in the Park will be on September 13th. Also, kind of immediately following that event, we also had the second grooving of the Grove for the summer, the summer concert series, which was held from 4 to 7 p.m. The Gentall Band was performing. We had a little light attendance just due to some of the storms and stuff in the area. There was 175 guests that attended the event. And again, we had some rain showers and some light sprinkles, but it was a good event. And thanks to FLDP for operating the beer garden. And the next Groove at the Grove is July 12th. And again, some upcoming regular meetings. As a reminder, we only have one meeting in July. So that's a 5 p.m. meeting, 5 p.m. regular meeting, and 6 p.m. meeting when we can do public hearings and stuff like that. That'll be here in the circuit court. Wednesday, August 6th at 5 p.m. regular meeting here in the circuit court, and then Wednesday, August 20th at 6 p.m. regular meeting here in the circuit court. And happy to answer any questions.
I'll just say that Jeremy Wood coming in on the Sheriff's Department is a Fluvanna original, so it's good to have him back.
Yeah.
All right.
Was he in Albemarle?
I think it was Charlottesville.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, thank you. We'll move on to the first round of public comments. Anybody wishing to speak, please address your comments to the board and keep the 5 minutes.
Patty Rayner, 3531 Union Mills Road. And I went to the planning commission meeting last week, and there was discussion of a piece of property on Route 15 being rezoned to industrial. And so if it's my understanding correctly, when property is rezoned, it comes out of land use. So my question to the board is, when that happens, why is these rezoned properties not being taxed for the new zoning purposes? Again, this all goes back to land use, where property is not being valued and taxed properly or fairly, because now you have a piece of land that is way far more valuable, and it's not even, it's being zoned something else, but they're only going to be paying taxes at a much lower rate. So I want to understand why that is and why we are not enforcing the rules of that taxation. Secondly, I would like to talk about Columbia. I mean, I think we're missing a huge opportunity in Columbia. We have the railroad system in place there for the depot. And we're always talking about bringing things to the community, things to Fluvanna for people to do. And I would like to see us do something with that, where we have commercial rail to Richmond, maybe to Appomattox. We've got a rail system there. We had one in Fluvanna at one time too, and that was taken out. But there's a great opportunity right there on the major highway, Route 6, going into a major city. Also, it's a very, very historical venue that we should be promoting and developing. And I do not think we're doing enough to revitalize that part of the county. There's plenty of water, and it's on a main stretch of road. And we're in a part that needs some commercial and things for people to do. And if we're trying to bring businesses in, boy, that's a good place to do it. And I would love to see something done there. And of course, as always, I talk about the taxes, so I don't want to disappoint anyone tonight by not doing that. And I know that you guys are gonna get a town hall together, and I can't tell you how thankful I am that you guys are gonna do that. But I do hope tonight, when you do talk about the rezoning, that you do keep in mind about the land use and the taxation of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Raynard, 3531 Union Mills. And we got one important piece back in Mike's area, Mike Gode's area, back with the drive-in theater. So that was approved for reopening. So as Penny said, you know, Columbia provides a ton of opportunity. You have a lot of tourism that is now happening on the west end of Goochland. And the Lees Field family and some other entrepreneurs down through there have several wineries that are open. Plus, you have multiple weddings that occur there within a mile of Fluvanna's line. And so hopefully, and during the planning commission, we also had several families that do food service attend the meeting, and were hoping for some more opportunities to expand upon that in the area down in Columbia. So hopefully our tourism people will take opportunity to look at that, and our tax base could certainly use all the help that it could get. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak?
I might be getting a little ahead of the agenda. My name is Emily Tatton. I'm at 27 Haversack Road. And I'd like to thank you for considering me for position on the Fluvanna County Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. I've been a resident of Fluvanna County since January of 2021. And as a former educator and a mom to a student in Fluvanna County Public Schools, I appreciate this opportunity to advise our county on issues related to children and the families that live here. With your appointment and support, I look forward to being a voice for the citizens and a partner to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will you tell me your name again?
Emily Patton.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, we will move on to appointments.
So yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, so we've got, so let me kind of go down. So we have one appointment for the Java Board of Directors, the Fluvanna County Representative. We have two applications or two appointees or two applicants for that position. We have one incumbent and one new individual. For the Library Board of Trustees at-large position, we have one opening. And under that, we have 6 individuals interested, with one of the individuals being an incumbent. For the Piedmont, Virginia Community College Board, for a Fluvanna citizen representative, no incumbents. We have four applicants. And then for the Parks and Rec Advisory Board at-large positions, we have five openings. We have 10 applicants. Out of the 10 applicants, 4 of them are incumbents. So happy to, bring up anything, and certainly too, I know if there's anyone here that wants to speak or kind of advocate for themselves. I know Miss Emily Tatton spoke, and I'm trying to see if there is any up. I see, yes, Walter Hussey's here also for the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and believe that is it from.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Patty Rayner right there as well too. Thank you.
Patty Rager, 3531 Union Mills Road. Honestly, I applied for every position that was available. I've coached here, I've lived here my entire life. I'm retired from the University of Virginia. I think you guys all have my resume. I ran high fidelity simulators in School of Medicine and in School of Nursing. And I've coached and volunteered to coach basketball, soccer, swimming, t-ball, basically everything in the county. So I'm invested and have been my entire life.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak?
Walter Hussey, 334 Bobby Estates Lane. And I appreciate the opportunity in the past to make Pleasant Grove Park a natural experience for everybody. The county's got some awards and lots of recognition for that. It's good ecotourism. And our school children have certainly enjoyed it. Every first and second grader up to COVID had planted a tree at Pleasant Grove and had an Earth Day field trip out there, along with their parents and grandparents and whoever wanted to tag along. So we see that as a great resource. Appreciate the opportunity that you've given us to make that park a nature haven.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, open up the discussion.
Is there any feedback on attendance by the incumbents or not?
I do not have any feedback on that.
Just to clarify, if they are an incumbent, they're asked if they want to re-up their application,
Correct.
correct? And they confirm that they do.
Correct.
If they don't confirm, do they fall off? Yes,
Yes.
okay. This one, so basically, if you've seen an incumbent that's on there, they have said that they would like to
Yes.
continue doing what
yeah.
and they've confirmed that via email or phone call or something like
Yep.
that.
Well, I'd like to put forward on the Piedmont, Virginia Community College Board. Mr. Parrish works in the high school as a counselor. He's really interested in this. And I think he would be a good link between the students in the high school transitioning to their secondary education, and he could provide that bridge between both communities.
You beat me to it. Corresponded with Mr. Parrish via email a few times this week regarding this position. And I just, without belaboring the point, I agree with what you said. I mean, he's got experience as a counselor, whether it's dual enrollment or getting kids, transition to community college, seeing that as a bridge to 4-year, whatever it is. I think that having an educator with some hands-on experience in that position would certainly be helpful.
Since we've got so many of these positions to fill, and we're gonna go at them one at a time, so we can talk.
However the board wants to do it.
Yeah.
If you want to just do one
Would-
at a time.
Chairman, Mr. Chair, I think we just kind of go one at a time and then.
Sure.
And y'all guys got any problem with that?
Nope.
Or you could even say a blanket, if that's what everybody feels. Last time somebody said all incumbents, they felt were a blanket.
Well, we do
Unless
have a
somebody-
decision point on one of them. The first two are just one, and there's one incumbent. So if anybody's I guess we could knock out the first two and continue the
I was
PBC.
gonna say, let's just go one, I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Java Board of Directors, thoughts?
Yep.
One
Yeah.
is good.
Done. Library Board.
Mr. Harlow's reached out to me, seems very passionate about the position. I see no reason to not let him re-up if that's what he wants to do.
Anybody have any?
I'll second that one, because he's
Yeah.
played for me a long time.
I see head nods done. Hayden,
Got 3 for that.
Done.
Yeah.
Then,
4 or 5, whatever.
At some point. we
I'm
need
moving it
formal
along.
motion.
Yeah. Well, right now, we've got the 2 incumbents coming back. And then the third one is
You got,
Hayden.
there's
you have
4
4
incumbents
incumbents. Yeah, there was,
with
there
1
was,
seat open.
there was a correction to, that an email was sent to the board. There was,
Hold on,
that was for the
I haven't
letter-
gotten here yet.
yeah,
I haven't gotten here yet. I'm just
Okay.
talking about the first 3 that we just talked about.
okay.
No, we gotta make a motion before they're done. I'm just making sure I'll mark it. Okay.
All right, so anybody want to talk about Parks and Recreation Board?
I'll just say, Mr. Shaw lives over next to me. His father, worked here for quite some time and worked at Pleasant Grove, and he's young with young children and is very active, and I've not spoken to him. I just know he would be good. I've said my things, speech.
You said
Anybody else?
you had some thoughts there.
Yeah, I liked Miss Raynard with her sports experience to bring somebody in from that. Miss Spears Block also is committed on a lot of issues. And I know Miss Tatton from when I went out knocking doors, so I think we have a lot of good candidates there and a tough choice.
It's one thing good that we've been lucky enough to say here in the past 4 years is that we've had. Before, when Mr. O'Brien and I first got on the board, we were struggling to get 1, maybe 2 to come out. Now we're getting 5 and 6. It's a bad problem, but it's a good problem.
And that Parks
just
Board
also
is
agree.
pretty important for the fair and the events. As we do more and more stuff out there, we need people that are willing to commit time and energy to help Aaron out.
Let me ask. How do y'all feel about we got to fill 5, we have 4 incumbents.
So we're basically choosing one there.
That's
Yeah.
well, I mean, somebody could say they wanted to fill even more than one of those, but that's my question is how does everybody feel about maintaining the 4 incumbents?
I have no problem. I mean, I remember Mr. Singh coming in here and us trying to find a board
Yeah.
to get him on. Because he got turned down about 5 or 6 times
Yeah.
before we finally got him on one.
Want to participate.
But we also have the tool of if you miss 2 of your appointments, then it's at our prerogative to replace you with another person.
Yeah, I don't know of any issues there.
Aaron seems happy.
Maybe that's.
I haven't heard anything from him.
No.
Should. Block it, right? Jerry, all our choices.
Did you say Ben and Jerry?
Stop talking about ice cream.
Spoke, right? So, it's a toss-up.
So on the question of if we keep all 4 incumbents, I don't feel like we've got clarity on that.
I think we
Which if
should.
they prefer differently, I don't care.
That's his call.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're down to the one last person. So I've heard you've mentioned Patty, you mentioned
Ben,
Ben Shaw.
Tony mentioned both.
Not even-
Tony's a-
Good job, Tony. Wait,
He's a
you want
follow-
to,
We're not helping.
yeah. You mentioned both ones that they mentioned. I thought you were going to make a motion for a name. I was going to second you.
Oh, man. It was, and it's fine.
I'd be fine with that.
All right, we have
So
a motion made by
so-
Mr. O'Brien,
Is that in addition to the 4
You want
incumbents?
to, yeah. Just for
say in
clarity.
addition to the 4 incumbents, yeah.
I think the motion is, we're going to approve all incumbents. they're going to appoint Mr. Hayden Parrish to, the Piedmont, Virginia.
Well, hold on. We all voted on each one of those separately. So
I can make a full
let's
motion.
deal with this end one first on what we're gonna do instead of putting it all in one motion. And in Parks and Recreations,
Parks and Recreation. There's one.
right, then you made that motion, right? Then we didn't get a second.
I gotta say, second.
Oh, you second,
Yeah,
okay.
second. That-
Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Goode, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes 5-0.
And just for clarity, that's including the four incumbents.
Correct.
For the record.
And then, can we do all three as a omnibus motion? Okay. For the job of board of directors, I move that we reappoint Ms. Wanda Armstrong, incumbent, for the library board of trustees at large, Mr. David Harlow, incumbent, Piedmont Virginia Community College, PVCC Fluvanna citizen representative, Charles Hayden Thomas Parrish.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Goode, seconded by Mr. Sheridan, all in favor? Chair votes aye, passes 5-0. Moving on to presentations, item B, Fork Union Water Supply System Preliminary Engineering Report. Mr. Brett Helm and Newberry Engineer.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to present on this project. We've been spending about the last year working on it with county administration and DPU, Department of Public Utilities. So appreciate the time to come and present. My name is Brett Heim. I work for Dewberry Engineers here in the Richmond area. And
I
yeah, happy to-
apologize for, it looked like an L.
That's all right. I knew who you were calling. So we'll talk a little bit about the background on this project, what some of the objectives were with the preliminary engineering report. We'll look at the existing water supply system in the Fork Union area. We'll talk about what we're proposing for the water treatment facility there, as well as what it would require to expand the water system to be able to meet the objectives of this PER, and then get into some of the cost and value engineering that we've already completed, and then give you guys a chance to pepper me with any questions you might have. So.
And I want to apologize in advance. Your board packages were pretty hefty with this particular item, so.
Oh, we're buying fire trucks again.
Yeah, so some of the background on this, VEPCO got that special use permit to construct the line sanitary landfill at the Bremo Power Station. And so there was identified within that special use permit that 1.5 mile radius of potential to affect existing groundwater wells. And so the county entered into an agreement for funding a new water supply system in that area, for residents and businesses that might be affected. And the good news is that water source has already been identified. And Eric will talk a little bit about that later through the JRWA project. The source itself has been identified, permitted, and is currently under construction. And so you may be familiar with this figure. This figure shows that 1.5 mile radius around the special use parcels. The blue squares, which I know are tiny on that screen, now that you look at it, but those blue squares are addresses that are currently connected to the central system in the Fork Union area. And those yellow squares are for addresses that are not currently connected to the central system. They're on some type of groundwater well. And so again, the objective of the project, one of the primary objectives is to make sure that the central water system is extended to all of those users who are on groundwater systems.
And just to clarify, that was part of the legislation that came out per the coal combustion, is that anyone within a 1.5 mile radius gets the opportunity to hook up to a public water system. And oh, by the way, it just so happens that 2 of our wells, our fuzzy wells, are within this 1.5 mile radius. So that gave us a good opportunity to get the 47 million profit from Dominion for the water improvements.
That's right. So some of the objectives of the preliminary engineering report, we looked at the treatment requirements for the water treatment plant. We also evaluated a couple of different locations for that treatment plant. We evaluated how are we going to extend the water to the customers within that 1.5 mile radius of the landfill. And so that looked at not only the finished water lines, with treated water coming out to those customers, but also the raw water line that's going to connect to the JRWA line that's going to get water from the JRWA line to the water treatment plant. We developed some conceptual level plans and high level cost estimates, and then we coordinated to develop the preliminary engineering report, sent that over to VDH, and obtained their approval for that preliminary engineering report. So jumping into the existing water system, you can see here, this is your existing Fork Union area water system. The different lines that are different colors represent different diameter pipes. There's the system there is comprised of 6 groundwater well facilities, as well as 2 elevated storage tanks. You're currently permitted up to 370,000 gallons a day. You're on a peak day, you're using about 300,000 gallons of that, but on an average day basis, you're using about 135,000 gallons of that. And your water, the total length of water line in that area is about 23 miles. So just keep that number in mind as we get to the cost, because you'll see how much we're about to expand the system. So, all right, so the proposed water treatment plant, we looked at 2 different locations, one being on a county-owned parcel in the industrial, I think it's zoned industrial to an industrial area off of James Madison Highway. It's hidden underneath that big gold star there on the center of the screen. And then the other alternative location was on a Fork Union Military Academy property. The idea being behind that we would potentially be able to leverage the proximity to the Fork Union Military Academy wastewater treatment plant. When we looked at the benefits of those 2 different sites, it was a clear favorite to locate the water treatment plant at the existing county-owned property off of James Madison Highway. The Fork Union wastewater treatment plant would need some significant upgrades to be able to handle any additional waste flow from the treatment processes. So there was not much benefit to locating it there, and there was a better benefit to locating it closer to the proximity of existing customers. So we chose the county-owned parcel there underneath that gold star. That put us at about a 4.8 mile, 12-inch raw water line to be able to connect to the JRWA raw water line. And then again, it has the benefit of being on a county-owned property, so there's no land acquisition for the actual water treatment facility. We determined through some value engineering that we did with the county to size the treatment facility for 0.75 million gallons per day. Yeah, and so these are just a couple of the treatment processes. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds with these because unless you're familiar with it, it looks like German or something like that. So essentially it's a conventional surface water treatment plant with the added benefit of having nanofiltration on it after the gravity media filters. And so the rapid mix flocculation sedimentation filter out any bad stuff in the water. The nanofiltration, we recommended that as an option to add on after the gravity media filters, with the potential regulatory changes that might come down, specifically related to PFAS. It's something the term you've probably heard of floating around there. So in a proactive step, we thought it would be best to include that because it's not really a matter of when, it's a matter of, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that regulation comes down to the states. And then lastly, it would, in typical disinfection, it would be disinfected with chlorine, and there would be high service pumps that would pump from a clear well that would pump into the finished water lines that would distribute to the system.
And just one thing to add, we got Mr. Mitchell with the Department of Public Utilities here. And so Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Popowitz have been part of all these kind of discussions, kind of going through and reviewing some of the different treatment plant options. And so I think Matt would say that he's in favor of what we're proposing for this.
Yeah. There are any questions about water treatment and the answer to those?
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is just a process flow diagram of what I just discussed at a very high level, what different processes would go into taking it from raw water to finished water. Yeah, we don't have to spend a lot of time here. Here's some conceptual layouts of the proposed water treatment plant. For your benefit, just this is kind of the main operational level of that facility. And then if you advance to the next slide, just a couple of renderings of what that building might look like. There's been some changes since these were first developed through the value engineering process, which I'll touch on here. So the footprint shrunk a little bit, but I think that's to the betterment of the project. So, and again, once we treat the water, we have to figure out how to get the water to the customer. And so you'll see this figure again. This was, kind of building on that existing system there. The finished water lines you can see are a little bit darker shade of color. Specifically, they're shown down there on that CSX road towards the bottom in that 1.5 mile radius of the landfill parcels. And so, obviously the objective was to make sure that we understood what would be required to serve all the customers in that area. And so, we determined that, approximately 11 miles of finished water line would be required. And so, essentially we're meeting that objective of serving all the customers within that radius of the landfill. And then there's also, we identified some plans for a future elevated storage tank as the district grows. There'll be some plans to add some additional storage capacity there to support that, as well as a raw water pumping station when the capacity increases down there. So, and then probably what everyone's most interested about is the cost here. And so, through that initial recommended project, we recommended, a water treatment plant, the elevated storage tank, raw water pump station, close to 16 miles of different sized water lines. And the initial budget came in around $70 million, including engineering, construction costs, inspection, and land acquisition. And so, we obviously know that that's super important to meet that budget through the agreement with Dominion. So we went through 2 different rounds of value engineering. We took a really hard look at what was necessary and not necessary. Some of the things that fell out of the project, we removed the elevated storage tank. That's not something that's critical for day one of operation. Similarly, the raw water pump station is not critical for day one operation. Obviously the water treatment plant is pretty critical piece of infrastructure, and then the finished water lines to get to all those different customers as well. So, we looked at how we can optimize the water treatment plant. We were initially going to size the treatment facility for 1 MGD, 1 million gallons per day. We we decreased the size of that as well in a value engineering step to 0.75 million gallons per day as a way to save on budget to be able to meet that budget. And part of why it's been so challenging, I would say, to meet that budget is that agreement was agreed upon, during and pre-COVID. And so we all know the inflation that has happened between now and then, and it's only been exacerbated in the engineering and construction world. Prices have significantly increased. And so, it was certainly a challenge, but we took those steps to look at it, and we came to a final budget of about 49 million. So it represents about a 30% decrease from that initial cost. And as we continue into the detailed design stage, we'll continue to look for opportunities to value engineer pieces of the project. And obviously the budgets that we've developed, or the costs that we've developed up to this point, have been pretty high level because we haven't actually started the design. It's all conceptual at this point.
And some of the kind of the delay with getting forward with the engineering report, if you remember, we had to wait to get the upfront money from Dominion. We got a $2.1 million advance. And so until we got those funds, we didn't really have we needed that to start this whole preliminary engineering report. And just like with a lot of the different water projects, as Brett said, certainly projects have gotten more expensive from pre-COVID to now. So
Sure.
Sort of net difference between 0.75 and the cost.
In terms of the cost, well, so a lot of the cost savings came specifically from removing things like the elevated storage tank. I think that was close to $6 million. The raw water pumping station, I think, was around $8 to $10 million of that. And then again, we reduced the overall size of the treatment plant. I think that brought the treatment facility down probably like $5 million in that range. So
We're at $6 million permit. Is that right?
What one?
The permit happened there.
Oh, for the JRWA. So the ultimate final capacity for Louisa and Fluvanna or JRWA is 8.57 million gallons per day once it's full. That's our max capacity. Correct. Correct.
And is, that's the question I would say is. Presumably, or whatever. So let's say we're at 2 million gallons with these two things. What would happen to the other 2 million gallons of oil and infrastructure and costs that we do to do with that? And would we at some point in time come back and say, well, gosh, we really should 5 million gallons instead of 7.5 million gallons? Does that mean that we don't have the pipes to do it, or we don't have a facility station?
I mean, I think a little bit.
I'm just saying, great to stay within the million money, but
Yeah.
if we're making a huge infrastructure investment like this, you don't want to be in a position where we're penny wise, or say $10 million or something.
5 years later, we got.
Yeah, I
20
mean,
million.
one, so the 0.75 is expandable. So if you think about right now, the current peak for Fork Union's 370. So immediately with this, we're more than doubling what is available down there. And plus there's expandability of that. So that's kind of in the Fork Union side. You know, if you remember up at the Zion's Crossroads side, you know, we've got some capacity, about 75,000 gallons per day from the DOC for the system up there. And then we've got an agreement with Louisa for 425,000 gallons a day of our JRWA water for them to treat to go in there. What's going to happen? What's going to need to happen up at Zion's Crossroads though, long term, is there's going to have to be either the county is helping Louisa expand their plant so we can produce and have more water capacity up there, or we're going to have to do our own thing. So, you know, I think as you're saying, long term, you know, it's you want to make sure you don't overbuild something necessarily, because having stagnant water in the system's not necessarily good for the system.
Right.
And so having some expandability is the way to do it. So
Size, for example, if we were to go with 1 million gallons versus 7.5, I'm not saying 1.75.
Yeah.
Sort of that's what's the difference in cost today, $5 million, but we sized it at that level, and then we wanted to, you know, add in that additional $250,000 or half.
Yeah.
Would we be looking at $50 million again, or would we be looking at 15 million instead of 10?
Yeah, closer to the 15 million number, I would say. And yeah, and so the pipe that's going in the ground that's connecting to your JRWA, that raw water line, that has adequate capacity probably to go. It's a 12-inch pipe, so what, at least 2 million gallons a day? Yeah, at least 2 million gallons a day if we wanted to peel off more down the road. And that's why we have that flexibility of having that elevated storage tank and the raw water pumping station. So as growth increases in that area, if it increases, you know, then you have the ability to add on to the system to increase the finished water capacity. There's space on the site, the water treatment plant site for additional treatment trains to be able to expand the facility, like Eric mentioned. So again, you're not starting from ground zero. There's some potential water chemistry issues that come from mixing groundwater sources with surface water sources. Specifically how they interact when they're both treated to a certain level. So there's part of our study in the detailed design is going to be looking at, you know, what are the risks involved with blending the sources. It's not generally something we would want to propose. However, those will be available in the event of emergency, right? You'd rather have the water than not have it. So they'll kind of be held in reserve and be kept up to date, be kept maintained.
I mean, again, if you think about it, going back to a few slides, again, we've got six wells, groundwater wells within the Fork Union system. 2 of them are within kind of that radius that we're going to have to take offline.
Right.
And then we've got 2 others that are very low producers, correct, Mr. Mitchell?
Yeah.
Milton can produce a fair amount, but it's.
Can we get you up to the microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. The Melton well can produce a fair amount of water, but it's cannot run constantly. It does need breaks to regenerate itself. And the Owens well is one that needs to operate for less than 8 hours at a time and then needs to break to recharge itself. But the two main wells that we currently have, we can produce around 125 to 130,000 gallons.
Yeah,
currently
more
with those.
Morris and Omohundra are kind of the workhorse wells. And so, we had discussed maybe some of those smaller wells are not necessarily needed from a long-term standpoint, but the Morris and Omohundra, because those are the big producers, we would want to make sure that those are being maintained and exercised
Yes.
and utilized.
What's the one that I'm building?
So again,
It's the one beside NFS.
That's a non,
It's not functional, right?
no, no,
Okay.
I believe that's called Carriesbrook.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it has not been in service since I've been.
There was some issues back in the day with that
Contamination.
well, contamination,
Yeah.
that was taken out of the.
Back about beginning when we got on the board, right before that, I think, or something.
Yeah, contamination was
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Oh, they were still hanging on, that's what it was.
Yeah,
I think the big thing is we're gonna probably see more demand in the Zion Crossroads area before we see it in Fork Union, and having double the capacity now is plenty more than enough for what you can see on the horizon and then some.
We can bring in this.
And like he said, it was scalable. The only question I had was there were some sections on the existing line where it looked like you were upgrading from 6 to 8 inches. Was there a reason for that?
Was this this image, Mr. Hodge, by chance?
Yeah, it was down in the main area. Yeah, I see a section that you replaced. There was some orange in there.
Yeah, so the orange is new. Orange, because right now in these orange sections, there's
Yeah.
no lines in there
Okay.
right now.
This is where we've talked about being able to have, if you have a break somewhere, we can bypass that. and
Yeah.
Have a second.
Well,
Yeah.
it's always good to loop the system.
That's right.
For pressure issues.
Yeah, and just to kind of put your minds at ease too, with growing demand, we synced this whole report up with the master plan projections for growth in this area. So we took another look at that and looked at the projection. And so I think within the planning period, initially we said 1 MGD, but within the planning period, we're still synced up with the expected growth in this area.
Quick question. I apologize for having to walk out, but my son decided that his leg was part of the box he was cutting today.
Oh.
But anyway. Shoot. If you had to pick one of the things that you pulled out to get under the $49 million mark, what would be the most, if you could rank them in order of the things that you removed, which ones would be the most valuable to put back in?
I'd probably ask Matt which one he'd want back.
I mean, in all seriousness, I'm
Yeah.
asking this question because, I mean, if we're talking $4 million, we could pay that in cash.
And we got Dan Billhauer too. Dan Billhauer with Dewberry Engineers here too.
So one of the things you guys have probably heard and read about is this, Richmond water crisis, right? So
Yeah.
redundancy, resiliency. And so the point of failure right now, so if that JRWA line breaks or that raw water intake goes out of service, you're gonna be stuck with the storage in your distribution system, right? And so one of the things that we were preferring to put in there was a raw water storage tank right at the point of connection with the JRWA and then raw water pump station. And really what that would do is, I think we're initially sizing it for 1 million gallons. That would give you that 1 million gallons of raw water storage, and you can keep it topped off. That's before you'd be adding any chlorine, so you wouldn't have to worry about water age issues. That would give you a certain level of redundancy, right? So if you have, let's say, right now, your average demand is what, 200,000 gallons per day?
Great.
So that would give you days of raw water supply if the JRWA system was offline. So if it were me, I think that's something I was trying to consider.
That's kind of where I was going to that, because when we looked at the raw water storage tank, the elevated storage tank, we were talking about doing a 500,000 gallon storage tank, just like we have at Zion's down there, but we have got 2 elevated tanks in the area. So again, for the capacity, not necessarily the end of the world. That was kind of an easy one to say we're gonna push out, and then kind of downsizing. The raw water storage, I know we had some back and forth on that one a little bit, and there's some benefit of having that storage capacity, but if we're trying to kind of keep it within where we want to be, and it's not the end of the world, but it does, as I said, there is some benefit of having redundancy too.
Let's how much would that, how much of the, what's the price tag on that raw water tank?
I don't have the number right with me. I have I'd have to look at the report.
I think those both ones.
Yeah, I would say around 10 million plus or minus.
And that would also be able to feed the Zion, feed water up that
No,
way.
no, because what that would do is,
Okay.
so right off the JRWA line, right down and kind of Fort Union there, right off of Bremo Road or somewhere in that area, you'd put that raw water storage
right.
tank. So, you know, all the water coming off the JRWA line, filling in that raw water tank. And then if something happened to JRWA, you've still got this tank and that water can still get, that raw water still goes back to the water treatment in Fort Union.
Still got 8 days worth of water
Correct. Yeah.
storage. And 10 million, just off the top of your head, Mr. Dahl,
Mhm.
what would be the payment on that? Well, I mean, we just did how much with JRWA?
40s.
Yeah, 40 some million, so.
Was that our share of it? And that was 1.4.
Yeah, so let's just say,
We're talking $300,000.
no, it's gonna probably be, I'm just thinking about some of the previous debt I mean, you're probably looking in the $500,000 to $700,000 a year range probably for debt service. Yeah, probably, you could do 20 years, you could get away with probably 30 years too.
Few questions. I was trying to get my bearings about me on that map. Where is it? Give me a landmark or something where the county owned property is.
Yeah, so let me go back to.
Is it behind the community center?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little turnaround.
Right there behind the firehouse.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you go there, that's kind of where the.
I'm struggling with the scale because it looks way closer to the wastewater treatment plant at FUMA than
Yeah.
I see. Okay. That's what I thought.
So going back to there, so the county property is right
Yep.
here, you know, community center and firehouse are right
That's
there.
what I thought.
Yeah.
It looked way closer on the scale to the wastewater treatment plant. So I was thinking it was maybe back down this way a little bit, FUMA way a little
Yeah,
bit.
and remember, we can't use any of these funds for expansion or repairs of existing lines. The only thing we can do is in this radius, in the kind of dotted area, if there's no lines, we've got funds to be able to expand those lines if people want to hook up. And then, you know, certainly there's some expansion. Is this the kind of magenta, is that an expansion line?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's not an expansion line. We had to increase part of your distribution system
That's fair
pipe diameter to be able to get water to all of the customers at the
Okay.
at the back of the or at the southern portions of the
Gotcha.
county. So
One
Nope.
of you asked a question about the increase in pipe size. A lot of that is due to the flow rate of water within the pipes. Mr. Doan can attest to this, when the flow rate in the FUSD system gets up there, we get a lot of calls about rusty looking water. And having larger diameter pipes increases the volume within the pipes, which will decrease the flow rate as far as feet per second going through when demand is up.
Yeah, you brought up it. Thanks for clarifying that because that is something that we do see. So that would fall under the proffers is putting in those new lines that are larger. Correct. Now that provided a segue to my next question, which was those can be covered. What about, I know there's some issues with existing pipes. I mean, I know that it can't be used for that, but, and this is all, the proffers and everything is great. And I don't want to say this and to make it, I think all of this is wonderful. This is great, but what are we going to invest this money without then looking at our existing, what's in the ground currently, which appears to me from what my, so talking with some folks and, looking at some rate increases that we had last year to address repairs. I mean, this is a really old system. I mean, how much pipe needs to be replaced in the existing system, and how much of that existing pipe that can't be addressed with the proffers is going to cause problems for the expanded system?
Yeah, most of the system needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, probably at the next meeting, you're gonna get something about another rate increase in FUSD in general. I mean, they've had some significant repairs within the past couple years. And so, from a standpoint of, I mean, there's been some major repairs in the Omaha and Morris wells that produce the water. So, from a long-term standpoint, you need a better, more state-of-the-art water treatment system to be able to get the water to the people. And so hopefully that will reduce some expenses. It certainly doesn't take away the fact that, as you said, Mr. Goode, there are a lot of old pipes out there. And so I think I think there may be some grant opportunities out there for some of those things, but that's kind of something to look at and stuff as well. And the rate increases are gonna have to do that too. The one nice thing within the next, without getting too deep into fuzzy, but within about the next year and a half, there's a little piece of debt outstanding there that we're paying about $60,000 a year. I think fiscal year 26 is the last year we pay 60, then fiscal year 27, we have a half payment, we pay 30, and then that debt's paid off.
Yeah. Can I answer?
Yeah.
It's sort of related to that question. So one of the things we identified when we were doing the modeling for this, and obviously Matt can test that and his staff, there are some parts of the system that have really high pressures because it's all one pressure zone. So the way that we configured this new system is we divided it into a lower pressure zone and a higher pressure zone. What that's going to do is that's going to reduce the pressure on some of those older pipelines. So it should help. Obviously, it's not going to fully solve the problem, but it will help.
Layman's terms, are you saying that there's going to be less stress put on the existing pipes and perhaps extend the life of those existing pipes
Correct.
because there's less pressure?
Correct.
Okay. That's good to know, that maybe this new system is providing some sort of relief to the existing system. I think, this is not necessarily directed towards you two, but I guess to us in general is that, we don't want to lose sight of the existing system and the problems that are there. It sounds like we're not, because we're going to be getting a rate increase. I will say that it would be what I would rather see, Matt, Eric, whoever needs to hear this, is instead of, when was the last rate increase?
Just a year ago.
Exactly a year.
And then before that was what, 7-8 years?
Where there was supposed to be one current COVID and was put on pause and then it came back up. I would rather see some sort of, to be honest with you, bite it all off once and see some sort of proposal for a staggered increase that is maybe goes into effect every few years or something like that, rather than just bringing it to us when it's needed. Because if we do something like that and we are gradually increasing, at least people understand that it's going towards some of these repairs, and that whenever we do get into a situation where, oh shoot, we need more money, we're not turning around every 6 months. Oh, well, we just had another one,
Yeah, I mean, so with Mr. Popowitz out right now, we had hoped to have a rate increase coming forward because it's been about a year at this point now. And so that's been pushed back a little bit just with some staffing shortages right now. The one thing the board's going to have to consider is, Fuzzy's revenue has not met their expenses from a cash flow standpoint. So the boards, without going too deep and off rail on this, I mean, the boards, as they have done in some years past, they're going to probably have to authorize like a note payable for the Fuzzy system. We're actually looking back at 24, getting the $2.1 million from Dominion, which kind of went into the Fuzzy, account, so to speak. That money kind of clouded what the financial standing of it is. And so once we're looking at that and pulling that back out, there may be something from 24 we need to look at. There's certainly something from 25 we need to look at, knowing the expenses that have hit for repairs on some of the Omaha 100 and Morris wells, and revenues are down too. And like I said, I think next meeting we can get deep in the weeds on that one.
Going back, and I'm going back years now. You and Mr. O'Brien help me out because I may be off keel a little bit. 7 years ago was the first time we did the rate increase. Mr. Stevens went back. Up until that point, we were writing loans to Fuzzy, notes that, because it wasn't charging enough to pay its own bill. So that's when Mr. Stevens went back 7 years ago. And then, like you said, COVID hit. So we said, okay, we're just going to hold it where it is, and it never adjusted. So that was the problem. They started off when they first did it and kind of put us in a hole. I mean, then we've been trying to dig out of that hole since then. I mean, for lack of a better way to describe it.
I mean,
am I close? I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, as it stands right now, just looking at some of the figures, I mean, to make the system whole, you would be looking at some staggering rate increases, and I don't think you can do that right off the bat. So I think while this last debt that's going to be paying off within the next year or two, I think there may be a, a 4 or 5 year plan to increase and hopefully have some of this debt fall off while it starts to catch up and stuff like that. So.
I did have a few more questions. Let's see. I know I'm probably not gonna like the answer to this question, but what is the time frame that we're looking at here? I mean, obviously the JRWA initial phase.
That's next up.
Okay,
That's
sorry.
up on the slide timeline.
All right,
Yeah.
I thought the deck was done. Sorry.
No. Appreciate the questions. They're good ones. Yeah, so here you go. Here's your answer. So, we finished up the PER last month. It's been approved by VVH. We anticipate the engineering to be about 1.5 to 2 years. Within that, there'll be a pilot study where we'll refine the treatment process a little bit more. We think the schedule driver is really going to be easement acquisition. You're talking about 16 miles, close to 16 miles of pipe you got to put in the ground, and so that's about 100. Rough estimate, that's about 180 parcels that we're going to be crossing. So land acquisition obviously takes a long time. Outreach takes a long time. So we anticipate that's going to be the schedule driver, at least to get it to bid. So with that in mind, we think that we can get the project bid on the street about 2027, and then the construction period to be about a 2 to 3 year period. So we're looking at close to 2030 by the time we're up and running.
But the one thing we can look at too, from a phasing standpoint too, if you think about kind of the system as a whole, I mean, just to me, but I'll let the technical people answer the question. I mean, to me, it would make sense to try and get the water treatment plant done first to be able to hook that up, and some of those expansions maybe is a secondary piece to that. I don't know if it can be done in such a fashion.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's probably going to have to be a phased approach because it's just such a big project to bite off, at least in terms of the construction piece of it. So, the raw water line and the treatment plant can, kind of take priority one, and then the finish line coming from the treatment plant to your system.
The good thing about the water treatment plant, it's on our
Right.
property, so there's no easement negotiations
That's right.
on that. Like if we say we want to, and when you get to the JRWA, the water treatment plant is the more complicated build than just water line.
Right. Yeah. In terms of the actual difficulty of construct, well, there's a lot to coordinate on the water lines, especially crossing over some VDOT roads, potentially utilities in the right of way. So, I don't want to diminish that what's got to go into that, but certainly from a constructability perspective, constructing a water treatment plant is a little bit more complex than obviously a water line. So, and that is the end of the slide deck. So hopefully that answered your question on the timeline and what to expect.
So the next thing we actually have Dewberry creating the next phase of this, which is the engineering, coming up with a proposal for what it's gonna take to do all the design and permitting and everything. So that's something that'll be coming before the board, if not, probably not by the July 2nd meeting, but I'm hoping by the first meeting in August, we can bring that before the board so we can get some action moving on that.
That's right.
Too.
Okay. More for you all probably. The Dominion money, I know it's to be released in phases. Is that correct?
No, the Dominion money, once they get their permit, once they get all their permits, and that's the thing I'm still trying to clarify. I know they are really close because I know from the county level, they have all of their, I believe they have their E&S stuff in place. I think maybe some of the more state agency things, they're still waiting to get that. And last time I heard, I wanted to say, I heard it was going to be this summer is when they expected to get the rest of all their state permits that were needed to build the landfill. And so once those are in place, then we can, again, we've got $2.1 million that we got up front. So, I mean, I think to do the preliminary engineering report was like 150,000. So from the 2.1 million and the 150, we've got excess funds. We can start potentially moving on some stuff. I just think we don't want to get too far before we know that we have everything locked in with Dominion. So, but I think, by the summer, and those are kind of some of the next pieces, is finding out when they're expecting to get that. But I think they're kind of moving quick on that.
2.1 has already been released. Is that So is there 49 million left or 47 left to be released?
So we've got so in total, there was like 49 some million. Out of that 49 some million, 2 million was dedicated to, it was like 49.7 or 49.6 million. 2 million was dedicated for proffers for road improvements down in the Bremo area after the project's done.
Yeah.
Then there's $500,000 that's dedicated for green infrastructure or parks and rec.
That's right.
Space
Yeah.
improvement. So once you take out the 2.5 million, the amount for water stuff was roughly like 47 and some change.
Okay. And once Dominion gets all of their permits and that money is effectively released, we're getting the money before the project's ready to
We're not getting
end.
the money. Well, it would basically be like a it's basically set up like a reimbursement grant. So we would go under contract to do the project. We would have to pay for, let's just say that, we move forward with construction. We would pay a bill and then we would submit the bill to Dominion to get reimbursed
So,
back.
okay, so there's no way that, okay. My thought is if it is released, that we could find a way to see if that money can be somehow invested to catch up with the rate of inflation by the time the project is ready to be built, because,
It's basically structured like a reimbursement grant almost.
and there was no clause in the proffers with regard to rate of inflation and things like that.
That's an argument we've had between us quite a bit lately as well,
Which is,
or wish at least.
is there any way, knowing that we're getting the money that we need, that we could set aside money in advance to let that money grow in order to pay for the projects out of one hand and then get it in the other, but that money's being invested in growing so that we can make sure that we're reaping as much as we can from the Dominion proffers? Does that make sense?
I'm not, I don't.
They're making the money.
Every spare cash we
Yeah.
have is already invested.
No, it makes sense what you're saying. If we had that money, we could invest.
Oh, yeah, if the money.
Knowing that we're getting it back.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, pretty much what it's gonna be, it's gonna be an in and out type of
Okay.
thing. We're gonna pay for the bill at 1 month, and then, within 30, 60 days later, we're gonna submit an invoice to Dominion for reimbursement of what we paid for the last month or so. So unfortunately, I don't think there's any way to really gain any interest earnings or anything off of that. That's just not gonna be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, other questions?
So what treatment plant, it does include sewage as well too. right?
No.
No, it's just one.
And this-
There's a,
So we will generate sludge
Yeah.
within the sewage plant, but there will be.
Within the water plant.
within the water
Within
plant,
the
yeah.
water plant, but we'll take that sludge that we generate and put it into lagoons to decant the water from the top and then let it dry and then.
A portion of that'll go to probably it'll get, we'll have to get a 50s permit of pollution discharge elimination permit. So there will be a portion of that will probably go to a creek, but it'll be basically innate water. So it'll basically be like, just nothing in the water by the time it gets to that creek.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
We've got.
They have lagoons.
In the posting system.
Yeah.
The green sand filters, which remove iron manganese. They create a sludge that goes down to retention ponds and we decant the water with that. And we physically remove the sludge periodically. Similarly to what we'll be doing at this point.
That's right.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
But when it comes to the bigger conversation about rates, so the crossroads lines, a resident can tap into the crossroads line, right?
Yep.
So when we get to where we're talking about rates for FUSD, can we also have comparisons to what it costs rates there and Aqua?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And to that point, once this project is done, at what point do we have more of a county water system, comprehensive county water system, rather than the FUSD system? Because as we continue to talk about rate increases, and I think I brought this up last time, and I realize we're not there yet, but people that work at FUSD are public utilities employees. I mean, we have a public utilities department.
Yep.
I mean, at what point are we operating on a more comprehensive water system to where, you know, and I don't know how this would work out, but I mean, you're turning and I realize that money that rate increases that people from FUSD are paying are not necessarily going to projects outside of the Fork Union Sanitary District and its system. You know, but at what point are we kind of under a more comprehensive utility system?
So we've had a lot of internal discussions about that for years, and kind of one of the big pieces was there was debt taken out that is specific to FUSD, and so really, let's just say pre these proffers, if we wanted to dissolve the FUSD system, the county would have had to pay off that debt or something like that because it's specific to FUSD.
And how
And
much?
so now we're only about a year and a half away from that. The caveat to that is
Away
that
from dissolving it or?
away from the debt being, that little piece of debt being paid off.
Gotcha, thank you.
Now, the caveat to that now is now we've got this proffer money that's specific to the Fork Union water supply system. With the way that the proffers are drafted, since it's so specific to Fork Union, I don't necessarily know that I would want to risk any chance of dissolving Fork Union because the proffer is for Fork Union. And so maybe when the system's all built and all this is done, then maybe that's the time that you say, okay, well, Fork Union is just, again, it's all these water systems, in the grand scheme of things are just generally fall under the Department of Public Utilities. It's just Fork Union's got something special in that it's a sanitary district and it's the only system that we have that the board could implement a special taxing district. You could have I think a police department and some other things within that area. But we have not done that.
It's a lot easier to dissolve a sanitary district now. Now it just requires ordinance of the board.
Yeah.
Before you had to go to the
Yeah.
board and all that. They
But-
changed it 7-8 years ago to make it easier.
But I think the big thing is getting the proffer money and.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And very well said and point taken. I'll probably will continuously bring that up that as we start approaching a more comprehensive system, that maybe that makes sense. But in the meantime, I totally see why it wouldn't make sense to do it.
Yeah. No, trust me, we've been talking about that for years.
Yeah.
Well, you eliminate it and there's some reference to it in one of the proffer documents, they can go, well, they're not going to give you nothing. And this is, I agree with you. Don't change it until this is done.
Yep.
And if we're not going to leverage the other benefits of having a special district, then we shouldn't have it.
No, I agree.
All right, we're ready to go to item C. James River
We have
Water.
to go to public hearings now. It's
Oh.
7:00.
Okay.
Oh, let me tell you one thing.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we don't do any of the special taxing districts, things of that nature, because not all FUSD lines are in the FUSD district. And there's some people that aren't on FUSD water that are in the FUSD districts.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move to public hearings. Item G, public hearing or an ordinance amendment to amend
Be redrawn.
20-13-3, 20-13-5, 20-13-6, 20-13-7, 20-13-10, and 20-13-11, and enacting 20-13-15 regarding the food and beverage tax. Mr. Whitney.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So the county did adopt the food and beverage tax on March 19th. And the 4% tax will go into effect August 1st. Certain amendments have been requested from the treasurer's office and from the commissioner of revenue's office after meeting with them. And then also from internal discussions with Mr. Dahl. So at your last meeting or in May, the board approved the policy that basically states that 50% of the revenues collected from the food tax would be used for public school construction. So you have approved that policy. The other language that we're suggesting is that basically sellers can deduct 3% of the amount owed not to exceed $100 total. So of that 4% meals tax is 3% of that total amount to compensate for the collection and reporting of such taxes. So a lot of our surrounding localities actually are giving 5%. So what we're offering is 3%. And so this would cover, right now we charge a 3% credit card fee. So if that seller wants to remit that tax by credit card, then it would basically cover that 3% credit card fee. We're also clarifying that mobile food units will have to collect the food and beverage tax. So as far as the process, We want to clarify the process a little bit more after talking to the Commissioner of Revenue and Treasurer. So basically, the Commissioner of Revenue will send out the application form and remittance form. Those forms have been created, and he plans to send out those forms next week. And he'll send that to all the, all the potential sellers that would need to collect the food and beverage tax. So the seller would then deliver the remittance form to the treasurer along with the tax included, and that would be on a monthly basis based on the gross receipts. And the treasurer and commissioner of revenue would have the authority to examine the records of the seller at any time. But the commissioner of revenue would have the responsibility to ascertain the name of every seller responsible. But it'd be the treasurer who would proceed against the seller with my assistance for anyone who fails to collect or remit the tax. So the public hearing was properly advertised. The ordinance has been shared with treasurer and commissioner of revenue, and the ordinance would still go into effect August 1st. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anything? All right. Well, now I'll open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to comment, please address your comments to the board and keep it to 5 minutes.
Yes.
No,
Here
it is.
Yeah, I went to that meeting where all those things were approved, but there were some really good arguments, especially from the I guess the mobile meal trailers and trucks. So in addition, I guess for them having to collect taxes, and they have to get now permits when they move their trailer to a location to be used. And so in essential, that's just another tax that they're gonna have to absorb too. But that is the sellers themselves that have to pay, I guess, that permit fee to move that. And there were really some good points made. One point made by one of the members of the commission was, what about the trucks, the ice cream trucks for somebody's kids' birthdays? And it's going to a personal property. The property owner, I guess, has to also sign an affidavit saying that they have permission to be there, and then there has to be a permit issued. And there's a fee, I guess, associated with every permit, every time that truck moves or that trailer moves to another location. So it's not just that 3% or 4%. And then by the time you factor in all these permit fees and then the amount of man hours to collect, that there is no winner here. I mean, all we're gonna do is end up pushing these small businesses and trucks, the meal trucks and vans to our neighboring Louisa and Goochland areas. They're just not gonna be able to exist here. So I am fully against, I was fully against the tax to begin with, but it's really, it's another example of us not wanting to promote the business and the tourism here in our county. Even though that's what we say, we do exactly the opposite.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Conversation.
I'd like to point out that the trucks, those permits they need to get, they would have to get them irregardless of the meals tax.
There's not going to be a zoning permit required. Just so there's no confusion there. There's no zoning permit required. It's just affidavit from the owner saying they're given permission to have the food truck on their property. There's no fee or zoning.
Yeah, and I want to clarify some of the conversations that have been happening on the planning commission. I want to ask you a question first. Does Goochland, Albemarle, and Louisa, do their food trucks have to file for a permit?
So for the meals tax?
No. Do they
Or
have to get
just
a
in
permit to
general?
operate in Albemarle County, Louisa County, or Goochland County?
I'd have to look at the
Okay.
research. to
That's
see. I'm
simple,
not
isn't
sure.
it?
I am pretty confident.
I'm not sure if they have to pay a fee or if they
Yeah.
had to, or they had to get a zoning.
Okay.
permit. I'd have to look in.
All right. And just for clarification, this conversation with regard to the food trucks and permits and special use permits has been going on probably for 2 or 3 months now. And the planning commission, and I've been very involved in those conversations. The planning commission has been working hard on trying to do something that accomplishes the goals of what I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the idea of this whole concept started with staff having some concerns about some things and being able to track these things. And there have been a lot of conversations about what we can do to accomplish the goals that staff had with coming out with this idea versus cumbersome red tape for food trucks trying to operate in the county. What started out is almost like a special use permit application for every truck turned into a permit application, just like I guess a zoning permit application, which there was concern about them having to pay for a fee for that. So essentially what we've boiled it down to is, and I suggested this, was if we're going to have the meals tax, it makes sense if we're going to have the meals tax to know and understand what food trucks are operating in Fluvanna County. Because I didn't vote for the meals tax that evening, but if we're going to have it and we're going to collect revenue from it, we ought to know who's operating, and it's fair for everybody to pay the tax, correct? So the concept that I brought up is if we're going to have the meals tax, when food trucks submit their, and none of this this is still all working concepts with the planning commission. So none of this is stuff that would come to us. So none of this is set in stone yet. They, I think, had like a unfinished business conversation about it last week. Again, this has been ongoing for 3 months. So really what it's gone down to is from a special use permit to a zoning permit to a basically no fee checklist to show to show the county that you have gotten all of your licenses and everything that you need from the state, that the state already says you need to operate. That was one of the complaints of the food trucks. So we have to go through all these things. The state says we can operate. Why do we need to do more for the county? Understandable argument, but also understandable why the county would want to confirm that you have gotten all of those documents. So it seemed to me that if we're going to have the meals tax, that they would submit when they do their remit, or they, submit to the commissioner that they're an operating business in Fluvanna County, that they submit a checklist that essentially shows that they've got, and I don't know what the state requires off the top of my head, but they've done and checked every box for the state. Submit those forms. We've got it on file to show that they've done everything they need. They submit their remittance for the meals tax at the same time. We now know they're operating. There's no cost to the food truck. And that's basically, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, what it's boiled down to in the layman's terms.
And basically, they're allowed by right in every district. The problem was before, it wasn't a use in the county. So if the use is not listed, it's not allowed.
Right.
So basically, this actually will allow the use by having it by right in every district. So whether they're coming to county property, when they come to the fair, or if they're located on someone's personal property, they'll be allowed by right. So it should simplify things, and then it'll make it easier for the Commissioner of Revenue to contact those food trailers who are maybe just in the county for the weekend, or maybe they're in here for a few months, to make sure that they're collecting the meals tax from the customers.
Because what's really unfair is if someone is operating in Fluvanna occasionally, but not as often as, say, Daryl or June's, and they're coming in just for the fair, they're not submitting any form of remittance, and then all of a sudden you've got the Fluvanna homegrown food trucks paying a meals tax, but you don't have people from outside of the county paying meals tax. And quite frankly, some of the arguments that were made in support of the meals tax are we want the money from people from outside the county, and so this, I think, closes up that loop a little bit. I understand not wanting to fill out paperwork. I don't like paperwork. I don't like red tape, but to me, you do need to know that they're operating. If you're going to have the meals tax, it's irresponsible not to. If you're going to have a meals tax and not track it, let's make it as simple as possible for for people to do this. And I think we boiled it down to probably, hopefully, the most simplest thing we can, in order to ensure fairness in the process. And so
Parks and Rec directors don't send with all the vendors coming to the fair, the food trucks, he's gonna send the form to those vendors to make sure they're filling out the form, because they're only here for 1 weekend. Most of them are only here, 1 week now.
Yeah.
Make sure they're collecting it.
And I just also want to clarify, when they go, if Mike Good's food truck is set up at Fort Union Baptist one day, I don't need to go get another checklist or permit to set up across the street at FUMA one day. I might have to show that I have permission to operate there from maybe the president of FUMA or the pastor of Fort Union Baptist, but I don't need to file another permit to operate in a new place. It's one permit, one time for
As
the
long
county.
as you have the owner authorization from each property where you're located,
Okay,
that's all you would need.
that's correct.
Oh. We just said we need to charge of food.
No, I didn't say that.
No. I thought he, so
KP at Grass of Grain,
Just a,
he made the point to me. He said, Chris, if I'd have sat up trailer in this same parking lot, the crap I'd have to go through would be notably less. And I could have done that and the county have not collected this and that and have not had as much oversight. So, and he's basically making the point of that it was discriminatory to him for the food trucks to be able to come and not have the same oversight and be taxed in the same way that he'll be. And I'd have a hard time arguing, brother, you're a home, your building doesn't ever move and we're gonna tax and do these things with you. But somebody who brings a trailer in from Louisa won't be under the same burdens you will be.
Well,
So
one
the
thing I was
tax and
gonna say-
everything should apply just as much to them.
Is the thing where we have to catch up on is like, Tractor Supply. They have different food trucks there all the time during the week. Like I got donuts there.
But all they have to do is
As long as they have
the
permission,
sheet
but
from
we
Tractor
have to
Supply.
be able to keep up with that.
that's correct. And I think if someone's operating enough, word travels fast enough in Fluvanna that food is really good. And if they haven't done what they need to do on their end and they're not paying their meals tax, I'm pretty sure someone from another Mr. Sheridan's office or might be paying a visit to get a form.
Facebook's an easy thing for their office when people put out that we're here and there, and all they gotta do is say, hey, they're not on the tax rolls, but they're selling blank in Fluvanna County. That's an easy one.
You know, ready to make a motion?
I move the board of supervisors approve amendments to the county code amendment. Section 20-13-3, 20-13-5, 20-13-6, 20-13-7, 20-13-10, 20-13-11, 20-13.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Hodge, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0. Item H, ZTA 2505, amendment to the Fluvanna County zoning ordinance by adding 22-1-3 to identify the county GIS map as the official zoning map of Fluvanna County. Mr. Overstreet.
Yes, good evening, board. This is an amendment, as Mr. Fairchild said, to amend the county code by adding 2213 in order to identify the county's GIS as the official zoning map. So code doesn't currently define or identify the official zoning map. Mentions a map at 22.1, but it doesn't define it. So this was recommended for approval by the planning commission. They're meeting on 5/13/50, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to read the text of the amendment, and then there are about 2 slides. That's it. So the zoning map is 22.1-3 zoning map. The zoning map is composed of the digital GIS map, which is maintained by the Department of Planning and Zoning and is incorporated by reference as part of this chapter. The zoning map is available on the Fluvanna County website for public access. The location and boundaries of the districts created by this chapter are hereby established as shown in the zoning map. The zoning map also includes references to case numbers for rezonings, special use permits, site development plans, and other zoning cases processed by the county. That is a link to the ordinance I just read. Anybody needs to see that. This is our current zoning map. So we do have one. It's static. The parcels boundaries are about 20 years old, so it gets updated by hand, not the parcel boundaries. It's still useful though, so we have it for posterity. It's been scanned in and it exists forever. That's it. That's it.
Any questions on that?
No, I would just say that I'm on GIS for a lot of localities in the work that I do, and you guys do a great job keeping up with it for as small as I've seen localities that have 10 times the budget we do, have more difficult to find information, and you guys do a great job of it. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open it up for a public hearing, and everybody please direct your comments to the Board of Supervisors and keep it to 5 minutes. Seeing none, we'll open up to public comment.
We'll open up the public comment.
Discussion, board discussion.
We'll close the public comment.
Can we see a motion?
I'm ready to make it.
Go ahead.
I move the Board of Supervisors approves ETA 2505, an ordinance to amend and reordain the code of the County of Fluvanna, Virginia by amending sections 22-1-3 to identify the county's GIS map as the official zoning map of Fluvanna County.
Second.
I gotta ask a quick question. Can you come back up real quick? You may tell me this doesn't have anything to do with it. But when you talk about the different zoning, you're talking about I-1, A1,
Yes, sir.
and all that. Real quick, if we approve a zoning to switch from A1 to I1, it doesn't actually will change color, or will we have a dual color? Because it doesn't change the tax base until something is built there or it's sold and construction starts, correct?
So the zoning, as soon as it's approved, it's effective.
Well, but there's some places that we've done that, it has the ability to be I1, but if it's A1, it stays A1 until something,
It's, you just don't pay the rollback taxes until the change of use.
until the change of use.
In the
Yeah,
design- That's in the Zions Crossroads. urban development.
Are we gonna have something to identify that difference?
You certainly can.
That would be something to think about.
Absolutely. Just add-
That dual zoning.
And to piggyback on that, if it's in land use and you rezone it from A1 to I1, it falls out of land use, correct?
No, not if it's in the CPA.
Not
Really?
until the actual use changes.
Not
But does the value,
The reason that was done was to encourage people to rezone preemptive. Right?
Thank you. You knew where I was going.
So rezone, but not have to pay the tax. So the zoning is done, that means that when somebody comes in and says, okay, let's take, for example, the property, the older property.
Yeah.
You can rezone at that point in time, but until the actual use happens, you're not gonna pay the tax on it. So once that's.
But it's nice for people to sell it, to sell their land, I guess, without forcing them to sell it.
But just remember, this is
Rezone.
specific to Zions Crossroads only.
So the CPA and Zions.
Yeah.
The CPA.
Yes,
So with a button.
correct.
Okay.
You knew where I was headed.
Yep.
But everywhere else in the county, the rezoning will cause it to fall out of land use. Which then will change the
Pay
taxation.
rollback taxes.
That's what I thought.
and so,
I knew we had an exception to that at that,
What-
so I wanted to explain that.
and that occurs when, I guess, land is reassessed or is it immediately?
The
I mean,
zoning? No, I mean, like, once it goes through a rezoning in the planning department, I mean, I don't know what your guys' exact process, once GIS and the commissioner make the change. What's the process?
So once it's approved by the BOS, we notify the Commissioner Reynolds' office the change.
Okay, and if they've already been taxed for the first half of that year, is it then prorated on the second bill or? Okay,
I don't think so.
What we probably.
okay.
I think I've asked this of Mel before.
So there's a process when something's rezoned into a land that would obviously have higher value because of its zoning. There's a process for notifying the commissioner of the revenue that this has been done and that we are then collecting the taxes on that higher value.
Yep.
Right.
And the rollback tax is the 5 prior years.
It's 5, correct?
Okay.
There's a motion.
So I think there's a motion, a second on that.
Who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Hodge made a motion, seconded by Mr. Goode. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0.
I just wanted to try and clarify that.
Yeah.
I knew we had that.
All right, we're moving back to item C, James River Water Authority update, Mr. Dahl.
Yeah, I have a few slides. I'll try and be quick. I just wanted to give a little, just kind of a little timeline here. So again, just kind of looking at the construction. So spring 2024, the water line construction began. Also spring 2024, the Army Corps of Engineers issued their permit. And that was needed, one, before we can start construction, but also there's cultural resource work that needed to happen also too. So once the Army Corps permit was issued, then we could start cultural resource work. In fall of 2024, phase 3 MOA, which is memorandum of agreement approval was received. And that was with coordination from the Army Corps of Engineers, Monacan Indian Nation, and other interested state agencies. And again, that basically says, okay, we noticed there are cultural resource areas identified because we did a phase 1 and phase 2 archaeological surveys of the areas. And the phase 3 MOA basically says, if you encounter things, this is what you'll do. And you had to get all those stakeholders to agree on what that MOA looks like. Fall of 2024, cultural resource fieldwork began. And it wasn't everywhere. It was mostly just on the Rose property, basically the pump station property by the train tracks going down to the river and stuff. Spring of 2025, cultural resource field work and reports were completed. That was just completed here recently. So in summer of 2025, the Rivanna River crossing will begin and the wet well construction begins. The wet well is basically, if you think about the river, you have a water intake structure, but you have this giant well that's 40 feet below the surface that goes into the river. And so the water is gravity fed into the wet well, and then you'll have a pump station built on top of that wet well. So basically right now they're working to do Rivanna River crossing and they're going to start beginning wet well construction. This just kind of shows what's been completed so far on the water lines. Again, all these blue lines, and sorry if it's a little small, but let me try and give some context. So right here, this is kind of going back to Columbia. And so this is where we connect. So you can see the blue lines, water lines have been installed. It's not installed here by the Rivanna River. That's getting ready to begin. Water lines installed there. Some of these little gap areas where you see there's no blue lines, that's because there was some wetland features there that we didn't go in those areas because we jumped ahead on some of this construction while we didn't need to have the cultural resource stuff done. So all these areas where the blue lines are done, the Army Corps of Engineers didn't have any oversight or say so in us being able to start that. So all those areas that are blue, all the water lines already installed, the raw water lines are already installed. And to go more specific to the raw water line is also already installed. This is the Rose property right here. Here's Bremer Road and here's the Rose property. So the water line's already installed, almost going down to the pump station site. Right here, this is the James River. And so starting this summer, the wet well construction for the intake structure will begin. Going back to the Rivanna River crossing, if you drove by Route 6 on the bridge, you can see them starting to work in the river. As part of our permit, we are only allowed to do 60% impact in the river at a time. So, again, I can't remember what these are. They're called like turbidity filters or screens or something like that. And then they'll build a cofferdam, which once the cofferdam's built, then they will be working inside that cofferdam doing pipe installation. So again, we're only doing 60% of the river at the time. Once this is done, then a later point we'll be doing the other 60%. So as you go by the Rivanna River, that work's being done. So just looking at a future timeline. So again, as I said, wet well construction is beginning right now. It's not projected to be done until spring of 2026 is when the wet well construction will be complete. So again, once you have all that below the surface stuff done, then you can start with the pump station construction. So spring of 2026, the pump station construction will begin. Pump station construction is projected completion at summer 2027. After summer 2027 to fall, there's some punch lists and owner training things and testing to be done. And then right now, the current final completion is scheduled for October 4th, 2027. So I'll go back to that. We had to do a change order for the construction project. The construction project was originally supposed to be complete September of 2026. And the reason for that 1-year delay is one, the Army Corps of Engineers permit was delayed being issued. Because the Army Corps of Engineer permit was delayed being issued, the cultural resource work was delayed being done. And so that just pushed everything back. So just at the last James River Water Authority meeting, the James River Water Authority Board issued a change order, and there was a cost change order to that delay. And so I'll show you right here. This is just kind of a quick
Do you mind going back just for
Yes,
proper records? You meant it to be not 2024, right?
did I?
Fall.
Oh, yeah, yes, I'm sorry. Both of
okay,
those
just for
should say
people
fall
seeing.
of 2027. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
catching that. Yes. Yep. Yep. Thank you, thank you, Chair. The both of those should say fall of 2027.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you. So just kind of looking at the overall financial piece. So again, this is this document right here. These figures is what I presented to the JRWA board at the last meeting, which was a couple weeks ago. And so as of June 5th, we had outstanding proceeds of $25.6 million. Of that, there was about 24 million of principal. And the good thing is we've been earning better interest on those proceeds. We earn interest on those proceeds while they're sitting there in the bank and being unspent. So our interest earnings have been better than anticipated. In this next section here, this kind of other area, these are all expenses that were part of the original project minus the change order. So from looking at existing contract amounts for all the different things that we have going on to that, it was 22.5 million. So if you take the 25.6 million minus the 22.5, we had excess proceeds of $3.1 million. Okay. And the reason for that is there's a couple reasons. So one, when we were going into this, we had to project what the electric transmission going to the pump station was going to be. We had to estimate high because Dominion would not give what that cost was going to look like. They had to go through design. There was a bunch of things that they had to get to. So we had originally estimated about $1 million for the electric piece. You have to get, three-phase power, huge transformers, all that stuff going down to the pump station. The cost of that actually was 200,000 versus the $1 million that we had budgeted. So there's some savings there. In addition, we ended up doing better on our easement acquisitions. We had originally budgeted about $1 million for easement acquisitions, and I think we ended up coming in right around 6 or 650 for all the easement acquisitions. So we came in below there, and then plus we've earned better interest on the money that we've had sitting out there so far. So again, that shows $3.1 million in excess proceeds. At the last board meeting, there was a change order for Faulkner Construction due to the delay because because of the delay, there are cost increases for all the subcontractors and all the materials and the supplies. Again, the pump station contractor couldn't even begin all the work. The good thing is we bought all the pipe early, all the pipe was installed, so all that stuff's done. So to make a long story short, down in the red section are some projected, so the 979,000 that was approved by the James River Water Authority Board. We're going to have additional Dewberry costs. Dewberry serves as the JRWA on-site. They do construction inspection and construction administration for the project. And they kind of serve, since the JRWA doesn't have employees, they kind of serve as kind of an immediate arm of the JRWA for oversight on the project. And then we had estimated some costs. So just from that, we're looking at 1.5 million. When it's all said and done, assuming nothing changes, the one thing that will change, again, this 1.7 million figure in interest, that's going to keep on going up as we have money in the bank. But as of June 5th, if nothing changed in this chart, we would have excess proceeds when it's all said and done of $1.6 million. And so what you can do with that is, per the Virginia Resource Authority, you can reimburse yourselves for interest expense. So when this project's done, there'll be a year that Louise and Fluvanna County will be able to request reimbursement of these excess funds. And so there'll be 1 year where we will not have to request as much debt service money for the James River Water Authority project. So it'll be kind of like a 1-year sugar rush, so to speak, in some savings that will have.
Cover it plus a little bit.
Yes.
It was 1.4.
So, but we can't, so we don't have more immediate access to those savings?
No.
Troy?
No. you're not really gonna recognize those savings and you can't pull it out until the project's all done.
And is that half Louisa, half us? or-
That's 1.6, that's both Fluvanna and Louisa.
Okay, so really to us, it's half of that.
It's really half of that, yes. Well, yeah, I mean, on the original site, it was on the whole different site, yes, before it got really complicated and the Monacan Indian Nation became a federally recognized tribe and just, everything else, it was gonna be probably close to an $8 million project.
Each, right? Each side.
No,
I thought it
Total.
was,
Total.
yeah.
and then it went to 11 million.
They went to that 16.
And then when we had to move locations,
And I'm telling you, you wanna take a little interesting ride, just ride 2 miles across the bridge at Columbia and see where they disturbed 1,400 acres of land and nobody said a word.
yep, for the Cobbs Creek Reservoir. Yep. So anyway, that's kind of where things are. I mean, from a construction standpoint, like I said, all the cultural resources done, there was no big giant red flags that came up, anything that's showstopper. So again, the river crossing stuff's happening. Some of those little areas on the map where you didn't see blue, a lot of those are wetland areas. You're going to see that work starting to happen. And then, the river crossing is happening. And then the big intake stuff on the river is going to starting construction this summer too.
Where a lot of.
It's really just really like pottery shards of wood, pottery things, but nothing, again, nothing that's,
No skeletons.
no, definitely not.
All right, any questions or anything?
The one thing I will say is we can look back at this in the end, and it's gonna cost a lot more money moving it like we had to. But in the end, for us, it'll save us an additional river crossing.
Yep.
And it puts us 1.5 miles closer.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I don't know if it would be a complete offset of.
No,
Yeah,
it's not going to even close to a
No.
complete offset, but that river crossing and 1.5 miles of additional water line.
What you shared was always a strong point.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you right, the river crossing right now too, I mean, that's one thing that's a little dicey. I mean, they're having to put up these big coffer dams and, when we get these big high river floods, I mean, they've got pumps are working, they've got to make sure that they've got all their
Get the
safety
equipment
measures.
off
Yeah,
the higher ground.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not laughing at it, but I thought about that today,
Yep.
driving by them.
So anyway.
Any
happy
other
to answer more.
questions? All right, let's move on to item D, James River Water Authority Fluvanna Citizen Representative, Mr. Dahl.
Yeah, so really quick, again, looking back, so Joe Chesser was previous on the Board of Supervisors. When he left, he became a James River Water Authority. I think, well, when he was on the board, I think he was the James River Water Authority representative. And then when he left the board, he continued on as the representative. So he resigned in September 2023, and that term expired December 31, 2025. Again, when he resigned, Mrs. Eager came on the board. Again, she was a board member. And then she was appointed September 2026 while she was still on the board. And then when she came off the board, she just stayed on as a James River Water Authority board member. Mrs. Eager resigned her position this past June 2025. So we need to get a new appointment to the James River Water Authority Board for the unexpired term, which expires December 31, 2025. So just for some context, I mean, for Louisa County representatives right now, there's a Louisa County board member on the board and a Louisa County citizen on the board. And again, this agenda title is called Fluvanna Citizen Representative. That's just how the bylaws are. I mean, again, board members are Fluvanna citizens as well. So Louisa has a board member and a citizen representative. Currently, right now, we just have, besides Louisa, the county administrators on the board, and then I'm on the board also for Fluvanna. But so right now, we just have a citizen representative. So the decision for the board is, do you want to fill it with a board member position, or do you want to put it out for citizens? If we do citizens, then we have to put it out. If you want to do a board member, you could make an appointment on the fly right here.
But Louisa has a board member and a citizen
Yeah.
rep. Why do we not?
We did. I mean, Joe Chesser was on the board. And then when he left, I think just for continuity, because he'd been on the board for so long, when he got off the board of supervisors,
Sure.
he
Oh,
stayed
I see.
on as the.
We didn't
JRW.
re-up a new board.
Yeah,
member.
and
I
the
see.
same thing with Mrs. Eager too. Mrs. Eager filled Joe Chesser's spot when he got off. And then so she just kind of, again, she was a board member on the board of supervisors, but also on the JRWA board. When she left the board of supervisors, just
Yeah.
for continuity, she stayed on. And so now it's like, do you want to get a citizen representative or just want to appoint a board member?
Mr. Sheridan has been on this process since the very beginning.
Yep.
But do you have the time to do it, Mike?
It's Wednesday mornings, so it's during my planning.
It's
I'll have to take days off or half a day off.
so the meetings are
If
held
we-
the second Wednesday of the month
At 9.
at 9 a.m. in the Morris Room. And then we've been doing virtual meetings. We've been doing in person and then virtual every other month is what we changed to.
If it stays at 45 minutes, I can make it back to the first period.
I can tell you most of the meetings haven't been more than 30 minutes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it stays close to that, I won't have to do anything because it'll be during my planning.
I'd expressed interest in it as well.
Doesn't matter to me, but I was going to be on it one other time, but that got shot down.
Well. Second yourself, whatever, I mean.
So you made a motion.
Just to clarify, Eric, so you were one. And then
Yes.
a board member would be the second.
No,
Well, no,
there's
there's
assistant board, 2 county.
Fluvanna and Louisa each have 3.
So who's the other person right now?
Eric Anderson.
Okay.
It was a gentleman, gosh, I apologize for not being able to remember his name. The gentleman in my district, right there on Venable. He had the heart attack.
Oh, Mark
He passed.
Dunning.
Mark Dunning.
Mark Dunning, yeah.
Mark Dunning.
Yeah, we had Eric Gomez on there at one point. We had Mark Dunning and then I
Then
think
Eric Anderson went.
Eric Anderson picked up for Mark Dunning.
I appreciate Mr. Hodges' interest, to that. So we have time, and so ask for it, consider, sure.
I'll second that.
You seconded?
Yeah.
Did you?
Mhm.
For Sheridan?
For Mr. Chairman.
All right, have a motion by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Goode, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes 5-0. All right, moving on to action matters, authorization to advertise state-funded bonuses for registrar's office, electoral board, Mr. Whitney.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So in May, the state budget bill was signed by the governor. And the budget included a one-time bonus for local registrars and for the members of electoral boards. The bonuses don't require a local funding match, and Fluvanna County would be reimbursed by the State Department of Elections for the salary payments, which include the bonuses. So under section 15.2, 1508, we have to have an ordinance to authorize bonuses, which requires a public hearing. And we received this request on June 6th, which was right after our June 4th meeting. So that's why we weren't able to include it at that meeting. But so basically we had to go ahead and advertise it in order to get on your July 2nd meeting for the public hearing, since we only have one meeting in July. So it has been advertised. It'll be in tomorrow's paper. So this will be retroactively approving the advertisement. So the public hearing will be held July 2nd and the ordinance would be effective immediately. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody?
Nope.
Questions, Wayne?
I got one question. They don't, since they added all the additional days of early voting, they didn't raise what they're paying.
Nope.
We're already covering all of that. I just wanted to.
I move,
Go ahead.
I move the board of supervisors authorize staff to advertise an ordinance for a public hearing to be held July 2nd, 2025, authorizing monetary bonuses to the Fluvanna County Registrar and to members of the Fluvanna Electoral Board pursuant to section 15.2-1508 of the Code of Virginia.
I guess one clarification, I guess we want to say ratify the advertisement since we've already sent it to the paper.
I'll amend my motion to include the word ratify.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hodge, seconded by Ms. Sheridan, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0. We'll move on to item F, Board of Supervisors salary, Mr. Dahl.
Yep, really quick. So again, the Code of Virginia says salaries to be fixed by the board. Basically prior to July 1 of each year, the salaries for the board coming up for the next election term, this board would set the salaries for those board members for January 1, 2026. And again, the code also says the board of supervisors may fix a higher salary for the chairman or vice chairman, which Fluvanna County has a higher salary for the chair and vice chair. Looking at background, so board of supervisor salary increases occurred January 1, 2008. Then they didn't occur until May 1, 2019. At that time, the board voted 3-2 to increase pay for the board members. It was averaged between 13 to 15%, and that was effective January 1, 2020. Also, board member salary increases were also then approved on June 16, 2021. The board voted 3-2 to increase the pay of supervisors by 6%, and that was effective January 1, 2022. And then I brought this forward back to the board back in I think it was May or June of 2023 for 2024, and the board did not, there was a motion made, but there was no second and there was no action taken on it. So obviously the salaries didn't increase. If you see in the chart below, that shows what the salaries were in 2008. It shows what they went up to in 2020, and then it shows in 2022 what the current annual amounts that the chair, vice chair, and the other members of the board get currently. Looking at a review of FY 25 salaries. So again, every year in about April, we get something by VACO. They do this kind of annual salary review of all counties for board members and everything, wanting to know how much should we pay the chair, vice chair, board members. And then they kind of compile this all county list of different amounts for all the different localities, and also showing how many board members are in each locality. So just looking at what we've done previously, so the blue colors make more sense if you're looking at the big chart that was in the package. But again, when we kind of compare ourselves to the 7 local counties, these are kind of what the averages are for each of the chair and BOS members. The reason that vice chair is not noted here is because on the big list I get from VACO, it doesn't break out vice chair. It only says chair and then board members. And so if you look at that from a per capita standpoint, that's the amount of a per capita standpoint for just those localities. If you take the population average divided by those different amounts. If you take the 21 counties that we generally compare ourselves with that have a population of 25 to 35,000, again, that's what the average population is of those counties. And then if you take the average of what the chair gets, the board members, and then if you break that out per capita, that's the amount. And then if you take all of the 28 of those counties and then take the average, those are the amounts you come up with in per capita. And then the yellow line is what Fluvanna is right now, our average, and they use Weldon Cooper for the population. It shows the population average is 28,382, and these amounts are our current board member salaries, and that just gives you the per capita. So just kind of going on a history basis, kind of looking back at how we've increased salaries before. The previous boards have done it either by just looking at what is the average amount for that position, or looking at it by a per capita basis. So really there's really 3 decisions. One, the first decision is, does the board want to increase the salary of the board members for the board members that will be coming on January 1, 2026. So that's the first thing. And if you do, how do you want to increase it? So going back again, if you say, let's look at just what, and let me back up. We generally have used the all 28 counties average number. So if you say we want to use the number of the all 28 counties average, well, right now the chair gets 10,812. The all 28 counties average is 10,826. So, do you want to increase it by $14 a year? If you look at for the other board members, we're higher than what the average is. So that's that if you just want to look at it from an average standpoint. If you want to look at it by a per capita standpoint, you can see for the board chair per capita, we're at 38 cents for the chair, 34 cents for the other board members. If you wanted to look at it by per capita and use the 28 counties, you would increase it to 38 to 42 or 34 to 37. So again, if you do number two, that shows basically an on average increase of 9.65% increase. So if you wanted to change the current amounts for each board member, chair, vice chair, and member by that average increase, the new annual amount is shown right there. So those are, and again, the proposed increases and timing thereof complies with Virginia code. Regarding the funding amount, again, if you do it for fiscal year 26, it would be a half year amount. I totaled, if you wanted to use the number two amount based upon the per capita, a full year would be 4786. A fiscal year 26 amount would be 2393. So, and then in the package, you had all the salaries from Loudoun County to Fairfax to what some of those county board members get and how many supervisors are in each area. So I'm happy to answer any questions for the board.
7 local counties that included that.
No, it did not include us.
And it did not include Albemarle.
It did not include Albemarle. I'll just pull it up really quick here.
I got it right here. It included Nelson and Cumberland. I mean, and Cumberland has 9,000.
Yeah, so when you look at the 7 counties, the ones in blue here, again, this was in the package, the ones in blue are the counties that are kind of our comparable counties. The one thing I will say this year was interesting. There was a lot of counties. So if you see these 4 asterisks next to all the different county names, this year there was less counties that provided fiscal year 25 updates than in years past, which is strange. So a lot of these counties still do have fiscal year 24 numbers in there, and I don't know if they've increased or not. A lot of them, they don't change on a regular basis generally, but so the 7 counties is right there. And then for the 21 counties with a 25 to 35 population, again, those are all there highlighted in the pink or red, whatever. And then you've got all the other counties below it that I didn't even include in that. So.
Yeah, Goochland not provide their numbers.
What's that?
Goochland
No.
not provide.
No, yeah, Goochland was,
No.
they didn't provide any.
Here was the biggest one at 138, I think.
Yeah, Fairfax.
Population.
Yeah,
Fauquier,
oh,
which really, or Fairfax.
Fairfax
Fairfax.
provides their chair
But Fauquier was
138,000.
another one that was up there. No, it isn't.
I'll take 120.
Fairfax, it's Fairfax. I mean, of course, he represents like 300,000 people.
And has a staff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they all have staff if they're up there. I will just say my portion on this. I think Buckingham's, the amount of time that's required now versus before, when I first started, I think it's increased each year. I think Buckingham is $1,000 a month. To me, I think that's not out of the question. And if you look at percentages, of course, it's going to be a huge percentage because we don't make much. I mean, I've worked my first 2 years and wrote a check every month to be on the board. Now, I do get my insurance through the board, so.
In a year when I said going into budget season, that if anybody's gonna get increases, it was the wrong year with the assessments going up as much as they did, and then a 9% tax increase on top of it. I'd be going against the very thing I said at the beginning of the year. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just not the right year with the level of increases some people have seen for us to be increasing our wages.
I agree with Mr. Sheridan. The amount of time I spend, my wife says to me all the time, I'm busier now than when I worked 40 hours a week for the county. It's monumental. And I think the linking it to the per capita, more people means more phone calls, more issues, more time out on the road going to visit things. I spend an inordinate amount of time.
And I hear you. I don't
And
I don't know if I made zero or what we make or $2,000 more, it would make a difference to
as
that.
far as
We
the
don't do this
monetary
for
thing,
money.
if I was gonna plant my flag and say, look, we gotta try to hold the taxes down, a couple $1,000s, and I've mentioned this before, we'll argue for hours over pennies, yet we'll write $1 million check like it was nothing and send it out the door. It's the big numbers you gotta chase. If you're that concerned, chase the big ones. I know pennies add up, but.
Well, you looked at nonprofits and those
Yep.
aren't big numbers.
Mhm.
I don't disagree with what you're saying conceptually, Tim, at all. I don't think $1,000 here, $1,000 there. In this one instance, in a vacuum makes a difference. I said last week, Mr. Sheridan, I don't think you were here when we had the first discussion on this, but I've said, and I will continue to say on this issue, that, and you mentioned it yourself, my family's on the insurance as long as, I don't think anybody should have to necessarily be cutting a check to be on the board. Okay, I don't think that that's fair. And I think as long as the board pay were to cover the maximum health care plan for a board member, should he or she decide to have their family on the health care plan, should that exceed what the salary is, would be the only time that I would support voting to increase the board pay. That doesn't mean I think it's, it's bad if three people make the decision to do. I will say to the argument, I do agree with you that raising it to 12 is what, let's call it $1,200 a person. That's close to $6,000. It's not going to make it. I think there is an optics thing here. And I'm not saying that for me personally, I feel like yes, we're talking about $6,000, but I also feel like there's an optics thing here. And for me, I'm not comfortable doing it and probably would never be comfortable doing it unless the scenario that I just gave were to play out. So that's where I'm at.
So in the 12 years that I've served here, probably provided an average of 3% raise to employees and compounded to be about a 60%. So that's a pretty significant amount that we give to employees, whereas people themselves that same period of time, the compounded rate it's so small, but I'm guessing it's far less than 60% because I would put us at $2,000 or something. I'm in favor of doing it on a per capita basis. That's easy. The hand wringing about, did we do this for the tax rates or not? I'm going to argue the fact that because we've been doing some good things, property values and things like that. At the end of the day, that was a win for the Fluvanna County homeowners because now they have more assets that they can pull from. Yes, we're going to have years in which we have to raise the tax rates in order to meet the core services that we're trying to provide. But, if we're doing the right things and we are doing a lot of the right things, we will be bringing in the business and we will have a diversified tax base. We will have to lower that burden. That's a reflection of the work that we do here at this body. And I don't feel bad at all to provide myself another $50 a month raise. I don't think there's anybody who's going to complain about it. So I'm in favor of doing per capita basis. That motion.
Let me say before you make the motion, I remember, I'm gonna guess it was around 07 or 08, being at a board meeting. And this conversation came up and, whatever I was doing at the time on the board for baseball and coaching and on the board for softball and coaching and so on. I was legitimately surprised to hear that this board got paid at all. And I thought, well, gosh, look at all the volunteers that put in so many hours for so many organizations in Fluvanna. The chair of the president of the soccer league isn't getting paid and so on and so on. And a lot of those people put in a lot of time. But anyway.
So I don't know what is that per capita.
Good news. 1 year. You played for 20. You know how he is about keeping track of numbers. He looked at me and said, you want the good news or you want the bad news? So, well, I'm a good news person. Give me the good news first. He looked at me and said, this year coaching baseball, you made 84 cents an hour.
Yeah.
I said, my God, that's good news. I said, what's the bad news? He goes, I made 46.
Mr. O'Brien, you asked what's the increase? I mean, so looking at both of the increases from 34 cents. On here, this here for chair, we'll go back to the chart. From,
I'm referring to.
oh, you talking about the 7 local county average? Okay, I didn't do that one. That is,
44 cents versus 34 cents.
I did not do that.
I just, I'd almost say you're better off just pick an even number.
Just round it.
So if you do, so if you compared yourself to the 7 local counties, you wanted to go up to that per capita amount, that's a 34% increase, just looking at the chairs one. And so 34%. If we did.
Y'all go up too much, you're gonna buy me some time on not ever having to vote for this, because it's always gonna cover the health insurance.
You're not, or if you got that, you're not too.
Oh,
So it's
yeah, so I'm not.
29%, and so. So it's on average like a 31.5% increase. So if you did 31.
31.5, am I misunderstanding what you're saying is a 31.5% increase?
So yeah, I mean, if you were going from what we are at 38 cents per capita for the chair up to 51 cents of what the 7 local counties are, that is for the chair one, going from that per capita, that is a 34% increase. And so then, and going from the 34 cents here to the 44, that is a 29% increase. And so if you take the average of both of those, that brings you to the 31.
Very high.
Just for both, all positions, to say you would do a 31.5% increase to all amounts.
That might be the easiest way to do the motion.
So that's.
That's very low. Rest of them, believe it or not.
That would be, okay, so, I'm sorry, I did not have this one.
He's the only one met with the low.
So just on the chairs one, that would be a $3,405 increase for the chair.
Can we just do the motion with the percentage in there?
If you want to do, yes, thank you, that would be.
Let's
that would
just
be-
rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
I move to approve the pay increase for East Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors to the new pay rates with an increase of 31.5% on all 3 positions to be effective January 1st, 2026, and the amount to come from the fiscal year 26 BOS contingency fund.
Guys, was it 31 for us too?
It was
29.
31 was the average, 34 was
Oh.
board chair, 29 was BOS. If you take the averages of all, it was
Gotcha.
31.5%.
Have a motion?
Discussion, just real quick, I want to clarify, is this an action matter? This isn't a public hearing, so this is an action matter, so this is it when we vote on it. It's not published.
Well, it's published, I mean, it's in the packet. but
Meaning,
yeah.
correct,
Yeah.
meaning this isn't
It's not
published in the
coming back
paper and then
again.
come back and, okay.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Hodge, seconded by Mr. O'Brien, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye, passes 3-2. Thank you. All right, we move on to consent agenda.
Just clear, you said aye, meaning no, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Consent agenda, anybody, anything you want to pull? All right, unfinished business?
You need a motion for the consent agenda.
Oh, I, sorry. Anybody?
Um,
Motion made by Mr. O'Brien. Did you second? Second by Mr. Sheridan. All in favor?
aye.
I think I beat him to it. I think he was
Okay.
coming out about the time.
Chair votes aye, passes 5-0. Unfinished business.
Real quick, is employee survey is, I know there was some discussion about that being in the works. When is that going out?
So we had some contractual issues.
Okay.
So basically, anytime a contract's over $10,000, it has to go through my review. And there's certain terms in the Virginia code that are required, and the company refused to amend their contract. So I said, well, can you have the contract under 10,000? Then we don't have those required terms under the Virginia code. So that today they were able to lower the contract value to under 10,000.
did they? Okay.
So that was just late this afternoon.
Yeah.
They just didn't want you to have to approve it, or?
Well, they said that they'll only do legal changes if the value of the contract's over 20,000. So they basically just, well, I said, well, there's certain terms in the Virginia code for contracts over 10,000, you have to incorporate.
So Dana and I
Yeah.
were talking at the end of the day, I'm like, well, let's just see if they'll go below 10 grand.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So basically it's at like 9,920. So they sent to us late this afternoon. So I think we're gonna get that signed hopefully tomorrow morning. And so then we should get the survey running pretty quickly.
Have a rough idea of timeline for how
I
quickly?
would say mid-July for results. That, I guess they
wow.
work with them on the question.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay, sometime in July, hopefully.
I think it may, well, I mean, we're getting to the end
Probably
of the
first meeting in August.
It'll probably be closer to August, I would imagine.
Okay.
Like I said, I just don't remember 100% right now
Okay.
how long it would take.
Thank you. Any other unfinished business? New business?
Yeah, the one item, and Dan, I'll let you take this.
Sure. So the Commissioner of Revenue, Mel Sheridan, has sent in a letter stating that he'll be retiring December 31st, 2025. And so basically the way it works is the board can file a petition for the writ of election, asking that basically a special election be held the same date as the general election, which is November 4th. So pursuant to the Virginia Code 24.2-228.1, the vacancy would cover the period for his position from January 1st, 2026 until December 31st, 2027. And then the state electoral board would determine the last day for a person to qualify to be a candidate. There must be at least 81 days prior to the election. And then Mr. Sheridan can actually withdraw his retirement date up to 30 days before the special election.
So it wasn't 13. I don't know where that
It's
came
30.
from.
He thought it was 13 by checking
I
the
see.
code, and it was
Okay.
actually 30.
So it's 30 before the special election. So
Correct.
once the election is held, it's done.
So basically up till October 5th, October 4th, he can withdraw his retirement date.
Is that because have something to do with when the ballots are printed, or?
I would think it's
Because
because
of
early
would have already
voting,
started.
early voting absentee. Yeah, early voting's already started at that point, but so I'm not sure, maybe they just haven't changed that in the code. The
So-
30 days.
Probably something that was there before.
Maybe I missed
They
this.
changed it to 45 days. I mean,
Election season
When,
up to a year.
so would they have to, they'd have to get petitions signed, right?
Correct.
And by when would they have to have the
So it'll
petition?
be at least 81 days before the state electoral board will set the date.
Okay,
So 81 days before would be around August 15th. So so basically that'll give, about 2 months for people to put
Yeah.
their names and submit the petition.
okay. All right.
I gotta say something. I want to make sure I make an announcement in public that I am not running for the Commissioner of the Revenue. Okay, somewhere it got out there that I was running for the
I've heard
Commissioner.
it once.
Look, I had a phone call waiting for me and I got a message when I was in Bermuda. I'm going, the heck? I am not running. I want to clarify that. I am not running for the Commissioner of the Revenue's office.
And one other thing, I talked to Ms. Pace and she said if we had to have a special election that was separate, it cost around 35 grand. So that's the other reason that we want to have it at the same time as the general election.
When everybody's already out there, you might as well have it.
Yeah. Okay. And then
You can make this motion.
So there's a motion to adopt the resolution, then I would file the petition with the court and then they would sign off on the writ of election.
I'm gonna ask another question about it, but go ahead. No, that's okay. Let's move on. All right.
You want to do it?
No, it's a word hid.
Oh, that's it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I move the Board of Supervisors approve the resolution petition the circuit court for the issuance of a writ of election to hold a special election for the Commissioner of Revenue of Fluvanna County.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Sheridan. All in favor? Chair votes aye, 5-0.
That was new business, correct?
Yeah,
Correct. I have one thing, real quick. Dan, we were emailing about this a little bit. You had blind copied, I think, the board on your response to me, so they were all in the loop. It kind of is connected with not really the special election, but the position that we're discussing here. And again, sort of this whose role, conversations that we've had about what's the role of commission, what. So I had a constituent reach out that, about their vehicle tax, which, effectively they've got a notification from, JD Power put out, let's call it that it was like $40,000, their value in the current market. And they have gotten, I don't want to say like a recall, but a defect notification from the supplier regarding the paint on the vehicle, and some sort of indication from the manufacturer that basically the value of the car is actually 10,000 less or something like that, let's call it, because of that defect. And so they called the commissioner's office and asked about, is there any sort of, relief we can get because of this effectively factory issue? Again, I don't want to call it a recall, but you get where I'm going. And they were essentially told, which is obviously we here know that high mileage is really the only exception we provide right now. That constituent reached out to me and basically asked, what action we could take. And I was discussing that with you. And from what I gathered from you, and I just want to clarify, there's nothing really that the board could do to say that we're going to, and I don't necessarily want to have a conversation about feasibility, we can, but that could direct the commissioner to take into account certain types of factory defects that may be issued because they may not show up in JD Power, but something gets issued and all of a sudden you've got your property tax bill and really you're being assessed at, the defects not being taken into account. Is that, I guess, relief solely up to the commissioner's revenue, whether they want to accept that or not?
It is. It's up to the commissioner. So there's some counties, when I was researching across the state, some counties require an appraisal. You have to bring in a certified appraiser, appraisal saying value is actually this because blown transmission, blown engine, defective paint. Some counties just like Albemarle and Goochland just say, okay, bring in your evidence, your argument why there's a condition issue. But right now, my understanding, and I did email the commissioner, I think he may have been out in the office today. But we just offer the high mileage discount of over 150,000. But every county is different. Albemarle County doesn't offer the high mileage discount, but they offer the condition appeal.
Right. So was it the action of the Fluvanna Board of Supervisors that said we want to give a high mileage relief, or was that the commissioner of the revenue that unilaterally said we're going to do this?
I don't know the backstory, but I mean, it's up to the commissioner how he wants to do it. So, in Chesterfield County, like basically it's based on the year. There's a different mileage for each year.
Yeah.
Where here it's just a flat 150,000. So it's really up to each commissioner how they want to, handle the assessment of the property when it's not considered clean under JDA.
If Fluvanna County itself wanted to take into account defects or things like that, or have it appraised by someone that brings it in and says this is defective, whatever, that would be solely a decision of the commissioner's office.
Correct.
We had this discussion last meeting, and the Board of Supervisors can take that power back by holding a special election to eliminate the position and make it a county finance function. And this is why it's not apples and oranges, because when you look at Albemarle, they've got it inside their finance department.
Correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, and I see what you're saying, Tim, but there's also that dichotomy of if that's something that's important enough to people to be able to want to appeal to, that they can do that at the ballot box.
Yes, and I've told them run for commissioner of revenue.
Yeah, well, and I just want to clarify because I'm just going to be honest, and it's kind of come with assessments, and I don't want to say as much of this land use conversation, but it has come up with that. It definitely came up with assessments. It's now come up again where we do, I don't know if I might be, being a little too young here, but the Spider-Man meme where you've got three Spider-Men pointing at each other. That's what we do to constituents oftentimes when it comes to these things. And, and I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. And sometimes we may not really understand. And that's why I'm trying to get clarification here, is because I don't want, if there is something I can do to address, and maybe I may not want to address it, but at least I can say, hey, this is an issue that's under my purview. I don't necessarily support what you're advocating for here, or this is solely out of mine. You have other elected officials that you can appeal to if this is an issue that's important enough to you and to other people. And so I just wanted to clarify that there's really not much we could do.
I mean, the person could always appeal to circuit court, but is it just worth the squeeze, you know? Appeal. Usually you don't see appeals on personal property, you see it on real property.
And here would be the one thing I would look at and just say, and he is out of town. He is going to be very busy tomorrow. That's the rest of it. I'll let him tell you the rest of it. But if we start doing that where it's individually looked at each time, then you starting to talk about it, then you have to expand staffs.
I understand that. Yeah.
And
No,
I'm not trying to make that as an argument, but Albemarle has 50 people in their finance department. We have 2 very wonderful people in our finance department. Okay, I mean, I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
But hypothetically, they probably have that many, or at least 20.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I'm saying.
And that's why I
agree.
said that there's probably a whole separate conversation about feasibility.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm.
That's what I meant.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if we can do anything about it, because I'm gonna bring up something. Thank you for doing this, because I'm gonna bring up something after this.
I'm done.
Okay?
Thanks, Dan.
Sure.
I want to bring up something real quick, and I brought it up with you in new business. Had a person call me and reach out to me, and they were talking about, oh gosh. What was it? Oh, they wanted to talk about their appraisal assessment, and they wanted to appeal it. But in order to appeal it, you had to appeal by April the
I think 14.
Somewhere
yeah,
around.
April 14th, and we sent our bills out. A lot of people probably didn't pay attention to it until we sent our bill out May the whatever. Because we didn't send our bills out until May.
But it's not just to Pearson. You can still.
No, you can't make an appointment with the Board of Zoning, Board of
Board of
Equalization.
Done. Yeah.
So
I
that's.
thought that lasted the
No.
whole year.
So
No.
somewhere it got written where the final date was April 14th. Is there anything that we can do about that, Dan?
The board would, so right now our county code says that the BOE finishes June 30. And the state code says you have to have the deadline 45 days before that date.
So that makes
So
it
you would
big.
have to amend the county code to extend the date out for the BOE to hear
So
out.
if we were to extend the date to July the 31st for BOE, that would put it after our first bills went out. And that would allow adequate time, correct? So I'm guessing it'd be May 15th.
But there's nothing we can do about that now.
There's nothing we
Right.
can do about that now, I don't think, but I'm just talking about for in the future.
And I had this conversation with the Commissioner of Revenue. I basically told him it would take, board authority after a public hearing, to amend the code to extend the date out. Because he thought the date was December 31st. I was like, no, in the code, it's June 30th.
With our code,
Our county code.
the
correct.
state allows it to be up to December the 31st.
Correct. So that's something we may want to look at for the next reassessment if we want to extend out that date for the BOE.
We had them in the Weaver building. I explicitly remember putting equipment up there for the whole
I think we
year.
had a
I
discussion.
don't think, I noticed
I
that
think
was
during
language in
COVID,
the
we made
code.
special exceptions because of COVID.
So I noticed the language was in the code last year, or earlier this year, and the Commissioner of Revenue wasn't aware, and I don't think anyone was aware of that restriction in the county code. So I think that may have been why 2 years ago they were still meeting up until October. Because-
So we could extend it to whenever we wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, technically the term is through December 31st, like
Correct.
that we approved, but it's the county code is the issue.
I
It's
mean,
the restriction.
most localities are generally done by June 30th. I mean, because if you think when we get our, get the reassessment notice, I mean, the reassessment notice this year would have been the high water mark. And so, what you got in your reassessment notice, if that didn't make your hair stand up a little bit then,
I'm saying.
yeah.
But if that by chance gets overlooked, there is no backup plan.
No.
Once your tax bill shows up, that's your tax bill. That's the only thing I'm sitting here thinking.
But we
Is
can't
that
change it
something-
now anyway, right?
I mean, you would have to pass an emergency ordinance at the July 2nd meeting and then approve it within so many, I mean, it's possible, but it's.
Has
Yeah.
anybody else had, I mean, and I'm not, I think what Mike's getting at here is maybe looking in the future for this.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
I'm talking about looking to the future,
Yeah.
that this doesn't happen. That there's just a slight backup plan. It doesn't have to be the entire year that we occupy their time.
I mean, we could, everything we talk about right now, we'll forget about 3 months.
Yes.
Be relevant. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess we would just want to know what the board wants. I mean, we could pull together what other localities do. I'm not sure what you want to see. I mean, do you care what other localities do, or do you just want to say we want to do it
Let's
one
look at
month
what,
later?
let's look at what other localities
I
do.
mean, we can look at it, but I mean, if we have when you get your first bill on May the 5th or May the 10th, whenever it comes out, if you got to have a couple of weeks, so probably need to be longer than.
Well, they said.
I mean, you get your,
Get notice.
yeah,
You
you
get
get an
a
assessment
notice.
letter in the off years? I guess you get an assessment.
No, it's only in the reassessment.
No, it's just on full reassessment.
Okay.
Not
It's
on
on full
partial.
reassessment.
So it would be 2 years is what I'm talking about having this
Yeah.
thing set up for. 2 years down
okay.
the
But
road.
you're challenging does the Board of Equalization meet every year?
No.
Just on
Just
assessment.
reassessment.
Just
Reassessment
reassessment
years.
years, yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is that, yes, reassessment letters went out a little late this year, later than normal, from what I understand, it was my first reassessment year, but I remember Mr. Fairchild was over at my house for New Year's getting calls from people saying, when is my reassessment coming out? And I didn't realize that they were late at that point, but you told me at that time that was actually pretty late. And so maybe if they're late again, this is something that we consider, but this would be 2 years down the road that we'd even have to consider this, because if it's not a reassessment year, I mean, you're getting technically, when do they come out? November? I mean, that really getting from 6 months from that point to file your appeals either with the assessor or with the Board of Equalization. I mean, that seems like plenty of time to me, assuming they go out on time.
Well, historically, it hasn't come up. I think you said, Mike, as an issue, right?
I mean, this year they went up higher than normal.
Yeah.
It
Okay, I
came
think
out
that,
later than normal.
and it came out later than normal. And you used that great word assume. And I'm not even gonna talk about that one, but I'm just saying, just to have a catch that if you missed the first one and you don't get it, or let's say the dog eats it or whatever, that you have a second one, when your bill shows up, you would still have a chance.
No,
All right,
it ain't your.
how do we not, I mean, this is a legitimate question. How do we get to where this isn't an ongoing discussion tonight?
Oh,
Stress to have to look at.
yeah, let staff look at it,
We'll
just
come
come up
back.
with a solution.
Not July. That's gonna be enough, and this is too much.
No, I'm not, yeah.
Okay,
So here's my question. When does the board want to see something like this? Like 600? Okay.
Before 2027.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right, so,
but we can't forget, this is,
yeah.
Sheridan traditions.
So also, real quick, back to, this keeps coming up about properties that had a zoning change to industrial or business that then didn't get it didn't reflect in their tax bills. How do we find out if that's true? Does it have to be per property? This is a reoccurring thing that comes up.
Assessments. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Yeah.
But Dusty Christian
Does it go-
is building there just up from Wolf Pack.
Yep.
When it was being built, some citizens said, hey, that's not being taxed at the new rate. And I checked into it, and I don't remember what the answer was, but I continue to hear this come up. So I think we ought to find some sort of way. Is that up to the Commissioner of Revenue when that switches over to the new tax rate, or?
I'll have to check with him. I thought he had said that it's at the beginning of the year when they change. It's not like instantaneous after the rezoning.
Okay.
I'll check with him just to make
Great.
sure, but I thought he said it was at the beginning of the year is when they look, and if it's been.
That's
reset-
what I understand.
It's
Like
a
if you
CO.
sell a vehicle, that your vehicle falls off.
Right.
Is at the beginning of the year when sort of things are flushed out.
January 1.
Yeah.
One maybe.
I mean, things aren't always going to happen immediately. It doesn't mean that if a year rolls over and you're in a new tax season and that's not being taxed at a different rate, that's obviously an issue.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Doing his job. I would say that, if there's concern about this, what the board's oversight, some concern to say, let's do an audit, and I would say that the reason you would do an audit is because in 20+ years, procedures, things have changed, and it's certainly possible that something got missed. Or that there's a process that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
That would make it reasonable for the board to consider
What is,
what should happen, and whether we do that now or after the election year is kind of secondary, but.
what is the,
That's-
sorry,
All right.
Tony. What is the evidence that, I mean, they're not getting a tax bill for, like, let's talk about the Wolfpack property. They're not getting, I mean, are they FOIAing to understand whether or not this is being taxed at a, because that was zoned to West.
Pulling up the county code. So basically, it's up to the owner after the rezoning within 60 days to report the change in use or zoning to the Commissioner of Revenue. And then the commissioner shall forthwith assess the rollback tax. And which should be paid to the treasurer within 30 days of the assessment.
Rollback tax meaning for land use?
Yes.
If it's been in land use,
But if it hasn't been in land, let's take land use out of the equation, even if it hadn't been in land use.
yeah, I think he's only doing that at the beginning of the year, but I can.
Right,
check.
but effectively, I guess, land use aside on the rollback taxes, let's just look at, there's a piece of A1 land that's not in land use, it goes to B1. You would think that the B1, rezoned to B1, that it's taxed at a higher rate because the land is more valuable in B1 than it is in A1. How would we know that it is or it isn't being taxed at a higher rate just on the land value, not the rollback, when the year rolls around? I mean, how do they know that it's not? I mean,
I don't know.
do people know
I
that?
continue to hear this come up, so.
If you want to know, you can look in the GIS map and pull up the vision card
just click on
and
it.
just see.
And
what
it'll
the
show you the
previous
value?
years-
They'll show you the
Yeah,
history.
land value was.
And that's based off the commissioner's
And-
assessment?
Yes.
If it's in the Zions Crossroads Planning District, what is it?
CPA.
If it's in the Zions Crossroads CPA, it doesn't change until something's built.
Yeah.
Meaning the assessed value of the land or the rollback taxes or both?
Both.
Both.
Okay.
All right, so just, I guess let's start by just finding out from the commissioner, to be sure when that, if it's,
When
if
it's
it's
coming up,
January
yeah.
1. So, all right,
And I had one item, I just, last meeting, I brought up about the Crofton on the
I'm-
Lake Monticello Road.
Within the last couple of weeks, I apologize, sir.
I know
just
you're
haven't-
busy.
yeah.
But just so that it
It's
stays
on
on
my
the
radar.
radar.
It's on my
Mr.
radar.
Sheridan, you weren't here. I raised those two trees as an issue. It seems to be a standoff between LMOA, the board, VDOT, everyone says it's somebody else. I had a resident.
Spider-Man meme.
Yeah, I had a resident reach out, talk to the people on that corner. They said the trees definitely are not theirs, whether it's on LMOA land or in VDOT.
Look,
I can make it new by adding another tree.
They haven't known those two trees are there because I've only fussed about them for the last 3 years.
Correct. So
okay, so Mr. Dahl is gonna get on it and,
I need to coordinate with Scott Thornton.
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Well,
all
and,
right,
well, I think I can help you a little. Remember I talked about those trees at the other bus stop over on Ridge Road, I believe it was?
Yeah.
And he said, those are not in our right of way. We can't take them down, but if you are going to take them down, we'll provide you with signs.
we'll now open the second round of public comment.
And my premise, Mr. Sheridan, was this. Taking down trees, 2,000 to 3,000, there's two of them, the county should pay it to prevent them.
But we won't know anything until Mr. Dahl's done what he said he's gonna do 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, not that.
Yeah, no,
Probably
I
you have done
understand.
2 weeks.
Are you trying to get somewhere?
We're just,
All right.
all right, so we'll have the second round of public comment. Anybody wishing to speak to the board, please keep it directed to the board in 5 minutes. Seeing nobody, we will adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Sheridan, all in favor?
Uh,
Chair votes aye, 5-0.
And you're buying tonight since he
Yeah.
voted to give you a $3,000 raise.
But text and ask them to come back.